largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. You can leave us a voicemail at any time at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text at that number or leave us a written message at tvlr.fm/contact. Today, we have a huge pre-taped episode for you. I was at the AFL-CIO convention last week and spoke to probably over, dozens and dozens and dozens of people, right? But I recorded conversations with over a dozen people, many of whom you will be hearing from during this program. I'm really excited to be sharing some super great interviews with you. First, we'll be talking to the president of the Oklahoma State Federation of Labor. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to him, but we've got lots more. We're going to be talking to IFPTE's international president and secretary treasurer, friends of the show, Matt Biggs and Gay Henson. We'll also be playing an interview that I did with the national president of APWU, and there were a couple of really great speeches from the convention that I wanted to play for you about the subject of immigrant rights and the labor movement by LIUNA's president, Brent Booker, and the Machinists' president, Brian Bryant. That is his real name. And then in the second half of the program, you're going to hear a speech from Sean Astin, a hobbit in Lord of the Rings, some of you might know. And but what many of you probably don't know is that he is president of the Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA. We'll also be talking to Don Villar, secretary-treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor, about the Pope's encyclical on AI. We will be talking to people from Minneapolis about how the labor movement responded to ICE's occupation of their city, and more. So make sure that you stay tuned for the whole thing. But first up, we're going to be talking to the Oklahoma State Federation of Labor President, Forrest Bennett, and then we'll have our conversation with Matt Biggs and Gay Henson from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. Can you give us your name and your position?
I'm Forrest Bennett. I'm the State Fed President in Oklahoma.
What union are you out of?
CWA, the Oklahoma State Workers Union.
Okay. Do you have collective bargaining rights in Oklahoma?
We do not. We're a right-to-work state. So the State Workers Union started before right-to-work and has continued in one way or another since then. But we're certainly in rebuilding mode in Oklahoma.
That's really impressive to be able to have a union that doesn't have collective bargaining rights. How do y'all sustain that in the CWA in Oklahoma?
That's the million-dollar question. It took a serious hit during COVID, and we're working to rebuild it. Our executive board and leadership, working with Region 6 with the CWA, and it's been touch and go. But what we're seeing from the members who are choosing to sign up since I got elected AFL president in November is folks who have been with the state for a few years or for decades, who are fed up with the legislature ignoring them. And my background is I was a legislator for 9 years, and so I have been able to talk to people, rank and file state workers, from that perspective and say, I know your frustration, and I'm here to tell you from my experience that the best way for us to get their attention is through collective action, and here's this ready-made solution for you, which is the Oklahoma State Workers Union. So we're seeing people sign up for the union for the priority of using their collective voice, which is remarkable as far as I'm concerned in a place like Oklahoma, because oftentimes, the biggest sellers for joining the union are the benefits that you get through your CBA and things like that. So to see that kind of organic enthusiasm from folks from across the political spectrum is really encouraging to me.
You were a legislator for 9 years. Was that before, after, or during your tenure as a state worker?
that was my state worker tenure. So I signed up as a legislator. I was actually a member of a public employees association, and there was a budget shortfall that happened like a year into my time as a legislator, and my professional organization, which purports to represent rank and file state workers, many of whom are underpaid and overworked, stood with Republican leadership.
Wow.
Demanding that my Democratic colleagues and I and some other holdouts vote for a tax package that put the burden of paying for vital government services on the backs of poor Oklahomans, many of whom, unfortunately, are state workers who are underpaid. And so that was the moment that really spurred me to look for an alternative. And, it's a very interesting position to be in, because here I was representing 40,000 Oklahomans, but I was also seeking better representation for myself and for the people that I represent, because I represent, a low-income district with a lot of municipal and state workers working at various agencies, tax commission, DHS, and these folks deserved better. And I was doing what I could for them as a legislator, but I certainly felt that we all deserved better from a professional organization. And so found the State Workers Union, found it in a bit of disarray, but the folks that I'm finding to join are very interested in trying to build it up, because collectively we understand, and I've been communicating to them from the perspective of a former legislator, that the stranglehold of the legislative process by corporate interests is untenable. But right now it is the thing that controls what's even the Overton window of what's even okay to consider in the public policy realm, and that's unacceptable to me. And that's one of the reasons that I took the opportunity to run for this job, is to attack that problem, not to walk away from the legislature, but to attack the issue from a different vantage point.
So is that why you left the legislature, was to take on this job?
Yeah, I had 28-year incumbent had come to me, and we have 12-year term limits in Oklahoma. I was going into, this was my fourth term, I think, so I had a couple left, and asked me if I'd ever considered his job. And I said, well, no, because he was he'd been around since I started following politics a long time ago, and just it never really occurred to me that he wouldn't be around anymore. But he asked me, and that was incredible. Any politician, and I can tell you that I did not wait to be asked to run for the legislature, but the best elected officials are ones who did not seek it, that were asked to do it. So to be asked to do something instead of seeking it myself was an honor. Anyway, so that's how I ended up here, and my big priority getting in was to prioritize organizing office workers, and that includes certainly state workers, county officers, and county jobs, and municipal jobs. So we've got a lot of work ahead in Oklahoma, but I'm excited.
Can you talk about for people who are not in Oklahoma, what does the labor movement look like in Oklahoma? Like how big is it? What are the big unions? Give us paint us a picture.
So we're siloed and a little disparate right now, but there are our biggest union is the Transport Workers Union, the American Airlines mechanics, and then our building trades unions are pretty healthy, and the other CWA unions are AT&T, like line workers and stuff, but we also have obviously a healthy AFT union, works closely with the OEA, which is not affiliated with us, but we do a lot of work with them. So you're seeing a lot of the activism come from sort of the education space, and a lot of organizing work happening in the building and trades, but around construction, not necessarily around the labor movement. And yet we have a very rich history. Like the Green Corn Rebellion happened in Oklahoma, which was the largest insurrection in the country at that point.
Cecil Roberts would challenge you on that.
Sure. And I'm happy to have that. I'm happy to have that conversation. But there was a ripple effect from that. There was the Tulsa outrage, where multiple industrial workers of the world members were beat in the street and tarred and feathered. for their beliefs. And yeah, I mean, like Oklahoma was a union and socialist hotspot for a while. There was this populist undercurrent that I do not believe has ever gone away with the people of Oklahoma. And unfortunately, populism does thrive in partnership with xenophobia, and so we've had a lot of politicians who found success with a populism message that really takes a passenger seat to that bigotry. What I'm trying to do is thread that needle of a populist message that does not require us to disparage anyone. But if we're going to disparage anyone, it's going to be the corporate interests in Oklahoma who have enriched themselves by buying politicians at the expense of not only the people that work for them, but the people who literally live in the shadows of these tall buildings downtown in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, who are living in poverty despite working their asses off. And so, my old assistant used to say at the Capitol, a lot of people don't appreciate that they are labor, that, unless you're signing the paycheck, you are labor. And my goal is to try to help folks across Oklahoma's economy understand that. Class consciousness is a phrase that evokes certain political feelings, but there's certainly class consciousness among the billionaires, and I think it would behoove the rest of us to find some consciousness of our own,
Yeah. You mentioned that populism, socialism, these kinds of left-wing pro-worker movements have historically had a place in Oklahoma. And really, in most parts of the country, especially if you look hard enough, you can find, huge hotbeds of that sort of history. In Alabama, the Communist Party, unlike actually most communist parties across the country, was primarily a black organization. And in the 30s, they had a higher membership than the NAACP, actually. But the awareness, the consciousness of that history is totally, I think purposely pushed down. And there's a real, even in some parts of the labor movement, there's a real sort of standoffishness of discussing that history, of wanting to tie ourselves to that history, wanting to recognize ourselves as part of left labor populist movements of the past. How do you go about, trying to convince people in our movement that it's worthwhile to actually be connected with those historic movements? And then how do you talk to people in kind of the general public about the value that these movements have had in the past and could have today?
I think it's like, if done correctly, the key to unlocking that recognition in the average person's mind that, like, unions and the labor movement are the community that they're in. There's been this very successful and insidious campaign among the corporate class to make communities feel like the union is over there and you're over here, which is wild to me because, let's be real, the corporate C-suite folks are not the ones mingling with us at the grocery store or at our local bar. It is members of our labor movement, and that, there is organized labor and unorganized labor, and the difference there is just the decision to be a part of it. And so in reminding people, because I think that there's been this renewed interest in people to learn where they come from. I'm the descendant of Scottish and Irish immigrants who worked their asses off to get us here, not for us to say thanks for having the boot on our necks, but to fight for the same kind of future that our ancestors tried to fight for us. I think in that same vein, letting people who are fifth generation Oklahomans know what happened just a few miles from here. Your great grandparents were probably a part of it, or your grandparents were a part of that. Like, they're a part of a rich history of worker rights. And I just, this may not be the answer, but it is worth trying as an answer to this unbelievably successful campaign by the corporate class to make us feel like this rugged individualism, keep your head down and ignore the plights of your neighbors, is the way to get ahead. Because societies thrived only when we look out for each other, and without giving people the context of sort of their responsibility to be a custodian for that history, people separate themselves from it. And I just need people to appreciate that we are the people that we've always relied on, that we're not waiting for some great hero to come and save us, that every wonderful, sustainable win for the masses has come from a collection of people understanding that collective power is the only way.
We're here at the AFL-CIO convention. And I think you said this is your first time coming to one of these. What are your observations about the convention so far?
That it's actually smaller than I thought it would be, and that the level of enthusiasm in there has not been consistently what I thought it would be, and I think it is a reflection of just how exhausted folks in the labor movement are right now. It's also inspiring and thrilling. I mean, there have been plenty of speakers that have gotten me going and have said what I feel needs to be said. There's also this undercurrent of uncertainty among, internationals about issues around things like data centers and the positions that we are taking collectively, because I've got locals within the state federation in Oklahoma that are very deeply distrustful of data centers, and of course my building and trades guys are just happy to have something to work on. I think my hope is that this is an opportunity for us to come together and have those conversations so we come away as a united front. As a member of the minority caucus in Oklahoma, it was always our goal, because it was hard not to fight with a bunch of egos, but it was always our goal to end our caucus meetings all on the same page, so at least when we left that room, we left with a united front. That's what the AFL-CIO needs to do and our membership needs to do, is to find that through line of something that we can all fight for, and walk away from this experience ready to grow the labor movement in that spirit. And, I'm halfway through this thing, and so I can't offer a complete sort of report back, but the labor movement needs to get our collective shit together, because we're the only thing that's going to be the proper sort of response to what's the authoritarian fascism that's creeping across the country right now. And I think that there are members of labor unions that themselves don't fully appreciate that. So I'm inspired in some ways, I'm optimistic in some ways, and I'm also deeply uncertain in other ways as of right now.
I will say that it's my primary sort of, outside of my day job, my activist work has been in the labor movement for, since 2020. And I'll say that it for me, it's not an uncommon feeling to feel like, I think that we should all be kind of running around with we have our hair on fire, we're in a existential fight, and feeling like I'm kind of the only one in the room who feels that way. I think that during some parts of the convention, I've had that same feeling. So
yeah, it's a little bit alarming to me, just as a guy from a political background, understanding sort of what is needed to spur mass movements. And I came from a legislative situation where the expectation was that we were going to lose, and any win we could get was just sugar on top. But it also taught us to be looking for certain tells and certain signs that, hey, there's a path for X bill or to stop certain policy. We as Democrats in a very red place got conditioned to look for opportunities and not waste them. One thing that the conservative movement in America has been very good at is never letting a crisis go to waste. This is the crisis that the labor movement has been waiting for, whether or not they realize it, because there is more awareness of corporate greed than there has been in generations. There's more awareness that the system is not fair, and we are currently not in a position to be the main storytellers about why that is so, but the ones that are lying to us. And if we can appreciate that it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but that the other side of this is greener grass, the quicker we do that, the better. Because I know also, as a guy who's in the legislature for 9 years, that even the most passionate person can fall into that trap of comfortability with lobbyists, with corporate entities that, hey, we're friends. Like, right. You don't really want to go onto the floor and disparage us, do you? Or you don't really want to go back to your union meeting and call for a strike, do you? Because we're pals. And that's a very insidious thing, but also in places like Oklahoma and anywhere in the South or the Appalachians, like, it speaks to our disposition to be friendly. But the friendlier thing to do is to stick up for our friends and neighbors who are getting screwed by a system that doesn't work for the vast majority of us. And my hope is that, there will be people who come through this convention that are effective at communicating that in a way that clicks with people. But I have not yet seen that.
Is there anything else that you would want to share with folks before we wrap up?
Just that if you're listening to this, obviously you're already labor curious, but that my drinking from a fire hose education on labor from the perspective that I have now is that a lot of my local union leaders are so mired down in the challenges that this capitalist system is giving them right now that they don't have the bandwidth to take up the mantle for the larger labor movement. And that the labor movement has never only been people who are dues-paying members of unions. It's been people who recognize that when you work for a living and you generate the profits for your bosses, that you should have a say. And if you're a person who is frustrated that democracy does not seem to work, the union is the most minuscule version of democracy, and that if we want to restore this country, it's going to happen shop by shop and office by office, and it's going to be the labor movement that does it. So my hope is that people who can find a way to join a union, and people who can't go to their union friend and say, how can I help? What's the next thing I can show up for? Because we all believe this idea that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Who the fuck is bending it? It's us. So get to bending.
We're joined by Matt Biggs, International President of IFPTE, the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, and Gay Henson, the International Secretary-Treasurer of the same union. Thank y'all both for talking to us today.
We have a president that is the most anti-union, anti-worker president in American history. One of his first orders of business was to sign an executive order that stripped over 1 million workers of their collective bargaining rights, federal employees. He signed another one subsequently in August of last year on the Friday before Labor Day weekend of all days that stripped another 300,000 workers of their collective bargaining rights. Now these are federal employees, but if this president is permitted to bust unions in the federal sector, it's not long before he comes after federal contractors. He goes after the private sector in general. And states and localities across the country follow his lead by also trying to bust unions in the public sector. And in fact, they already have. We see a Democratic governor in Virginia who promised to sign legislation when she was running for office that granted state workers in Virginia collective bargaining rights. And she turned her back on that promise and walked the other way. And this is a person that was in the United States Congress for several terms. And she saw what President Trump did, and she followed his lead. So it's already, it doesn't matter Democrat, Republican, but it's already getting into the public sector, sadly. You mentioned Spanberger, and that was really, in a sense it was surprising just because it's such it does not make sense from a Democratic coalition or from like what's right. But, I guess to be sort of fair to her, she was on the campaign trail saying that she would veto a repeal of right to work, and so it's
frustrating that there were not it's a little frustrating, it seems like, that there were not more like pro-labor candidates in the primary. I mean, she was totally unopposed, right?
She was totally unopposed in the Democratic primary. She was kind of the anointed one. And yeah, Virginia's a right-to-work state, sadly. But Virginia has turned into a Democratic blue state. I mean, let's face it. That bill that allowed state workers to have unions legally, right, recognize unions, that passed through the legislature. It's not as if she vetoed the bill. She had the support of the legislature and the state overall. I mean, so the idea that she vetoed that bill is shameful. It really is shameful. And she promised the public sector unions that she would sign that bill into law, and she didn't do it. But yeah.
She even came to the SEIU's rally about the bill.
She came about the bill, and it was almost, sometimes as labor unions we have to swallow hard. We have to swallow it hard, and the bitter taste of, hey, we'll take the state collective bargaining rights now, and we'll fight for the rest. We'll fight to make Virginia a non-right-to-work state later, and that's kind of what we did, right? Because at least we can get this now. But you're right. I mean, it's she's an anti-union governor as far as I'm concerned. She vetoed a pro-union, pro-collective bargaining bill. She's pro-right-to-work. What's the difference between her and Donald Trump? Not much, as far as I can see. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are still a lot, at least some federal workers that have the right to collectively bargain. And yeah, I mean, it's very, very frustrating. We're here at the AFL-CIO convention. Gay, you and I come from a very similar place. You're from Chattanooga. I'm from Huntsville, just basically down the road in the context of the country. What are some of the takeaways that you've had from this convention, some of the resolutions, the panel discussions, and some of the speeches, as it relates to, the attack on working people by this administration, but any other observations that you would have?
Well, I've been especially interested in hearing about all the immigrant issues. I mean, we represent immigration judges. Their collective bargaining rights were taken a long time ago now, first administration of Trump, and then we've got a continued attack on them. And we've had judges that were in the chambers giving out to listening to people who finally got their case heard, and then they'd be snatched away and basically had to go out back, come in the back door and tell them you're fired. It's unheard of in this country that we're treating people like that. I mean, not just the judge themselves, but the people that waited, and then now they don't get an answer if they start waiting all over again, start a new clock ticking. It's really crazy. We need more immigration judges, and we've lost about 200 probably?
Lost 200 of the 700 nationwide. Yep.
Yeah, there weren't many to start with. We needed about 500 more when we started, and now we're 200 down from that. So, and I enjoy listening to people talk about what's happening, because I don't think everybody understands what's going on the streets, and still is happening even here in Minnesota. It's unheard of. It's not America that we've known our whole life. So,
yeah, I mean, these immigrants that appear before the judges, who were unionized, like Gay said, and but they're still a union. They still pay their dues, and they're still a union, and they still fight for their members, I will say. But in this country, this administration has an all-out war against immigrants in this country, and these are just working people. These are working people. They work hard. They take care of their families. They pay taxes. They do everything that someone that might have a green card or someone that's like us that has citizenship does, and they're being targeted, and they don't even, now they're being denied their due process rights.
Right.
Their day in court before an independent, impartial judge that determines whether they are eligible for asylum or not. And I'll tell you what, if we allow in this nation for immigrants to be denied their due process rights, then it's not long before they come after all of us and deny all of us our due process rights. It's coming, and we all need to stand up and fight for these fellow workers. They're workers just like all the rest of us.
Right. I think it's important for everybody here, and I think it's happening. People are starting to realize that if it happens in the federal government, they're next. Because it's because of greed. These people that run these businesses want more money. They don't want their workers to have any power, and the greed is just basically taking over the nation. So,
Y'all were talking about the immigration, and the labor movement has sort of evolved on this issue. I wasn't involved when the labor movement had a different stance, but the labor movement, I mean, even as recently as I think the 90s, was more sort of, they certainly wouldn't have said anti-immigrant, but they were a little bit more hawkish on border security and immigration and things like that. But certainly, if you go back and look, the very first piece of legislation that the American Federation of Labor supported was the Chinese Exclusion Act. And so what do I know that it's sort of just an interesting kind of thing to think about, but what do you think it was that motivated the labor movement to be more kind of welcoming of immigrants into the fold, as opposed to seeing them as potential enemies of their unions?
Yeah, I mean, we represent immigrant workers in the labor movement. And you're right. I mean, our history when it comes to immigration and immigrant rights, it was a long time ago, but I mean, it's a history that needed to be corrected, and it's been corrected big time. So credit to the labor movement. I'll say with civil rights and, just within our own unions when it comes to that stuff. So this labor movement's heading in the right direction when it comes to all of that stuff. And we're already there. Let's just put it. We're out in the forefront fighting for these things.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we represent immigrants. I mean, immigrants are in all of our unions. This thing about birthright citizenship, IFPTE is filed an amicus on it was an SEIU-led lawsuit in the Supreme Court to this administration's going after birthright citizenship to fight that. Because, of course, we represent naturalized citizens all throughout our union, and we're proud to. And other unions represent immigrants, right? They're out fighting for their members that have been detained, been kidnapped off the streets of America by a rogue and corrupt administration, and they're out fighting to get their members out, and not only their members, to get workers out, because these people aren't the worst of the worst. These are just working people. They got families, and they want to go home they want to go to work. And they want to earn a living and go home to their families at the end of the day. And, kudos to the labor movement for being out in front of that fight.
Changing topics, going back to something that you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the attack on union rights in the federal government, and how even in the absence of recognized rights to a union and to collective bargaining, your locals in the federal government are still acting like a union, and they still, as far as we're concerned, are a union. I'm a member of AFGE, and so this is something that's affecting my union as well. And I hear from rank and file workers in that my local represents, and I hear from stewards within my local that sometimes it can be really difficult to convince people to stay on, because they don't, these other folks, they don't kind of recognize the value that a union brings to the table, and they kind of see the fight as hopeless. What would you say to people? What would you say to the stewards who are having these issues, and what would you say to the people who themselves are questioning whether or not it makes sense to remain a member of their union?
Yeah, we've had to be honest, Matt and I have had to remind our members in the Fed that even though the collective bargaining rights have been taken, they're still a union. They need to act like a union. They need to be the union. Be there for the people who are in despair. There's a lot of people that, like last fall, we had almost a year of everything, all the attacks. People were in total despair, and they were fatigued. They were like, I don't know if I can move another inch on this. I'm like, we got to stand together. And every union, unions were around long before we had the right to have a union, and that's what we have to remind people. But we've been around since 1918, and we were shipbuilders when we started back, 1918, and we just have to hold on to it. we just got to wait this out and make sure that we can keep everybody encouraged enough to stick with it, because every worker needs a union, and they don't need to lay down on it. So we're the leadership of the unions aren't. You can see it in this room here at the AFL-CIO on the main hall. People are very excited to be here, and they know it's a pivotal time. Like Matt said, that it's a difficult time. We have to stand together. So.
Yeah, I mean, Gay said it. I mean, our union's been around since 1918, and there was no law that granted us collective bargaining rights. We were founded as a federal employee union in Norfolk, Virginia, IFPTE Local 1, and we're proud of that. And Everett said it yesterday. Everett Kelly, AFGE president, when he was on the panel yesterday, he said it best. He's like, the law is not your union. Even our collective bargaining agreement and our grievance procedures, that's not what makes the union. It's the people that make the union. It's the members that make the union. We don't need a law to tell us that we're going to have a union or not. That's BS. That's not our history. That's not American history. And truth be told, if you look at the history of why labor laws came about, workers shed blood. Workers gave their lives for the right to collectively bargain. Sadly, in this country, that's what it took. But these laws were created not necessarily for the protection of the workers and collective bargaining. They were created for the protection of the big bosses, the big corporations. And that's why they were created, because the corporations couldn't control the workers any longer, and there had to be a law put in place. But when the law was made, the Wagner Act, when that was created, it was very pro-worker. And since the day after that bill was signed into law, we've been eroding that's private sector, by the way, but we've been eroding that law ever since. And Taft-Hartley was deplorable. They gutted that law. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the powers that be, the big corporate interests, the big bankers that run this country, I don't think they want to go back to the days without labor laws. It probably won't do too. If you look at American history, it won't go too well for them. So we're still going to be unions no matter what. In the federal sector, the public sector, the private sector, we can have a rogue president that's a union buster and proud of it, tell us we don't have a union, but that's not going to happen. We're still going to maintain our unions. We're going to fight for the members.
My favorite sort of example of how unions can and are still fighting, even in the absence of recognized rights, actually comes from your union, Local 98, being able to get advanced sick leave for a woman who she was pregnant, and the doctor recommended that she have more than 12 weeks off because of the complications of her pregnancy. And initially, the supervisor, I'm sure y'all know the story, but for the people who are listening, the supervisor initially said no, and Local 98 leapt into action. Same day, got a petition. Dozens of people signed it. I think they marched on the boss, and delivered it. A bunch of people delivered it to the manager. And then that afternoon, within a work day, she got her advanced sick leave. That's just incredible.
It is, but people need to let their voice be heard. You can't be silent, and all the way down to the rank and file members. They have to speak up, and they have to. But together, our voice is so much stronger. It makes a huge difference. And management start to realize. Of course, the Fed government can't strike, but hey, this could get really serious, and we could lose our workers. They could go on strike. We like it. Yesterday, we were talking to Anthony Shelton with cake makers. They're making cakes in the hall. Anyway, they do a lot of stuff. They got a lot of companies that kind of keep us all eating. But he was saying that it's important that people not be afraid. And of course he's ready. He's not afraid of a strike. I know workers are, and you don't want to have to. We have to be able to pull out all the stops. Whatever lever we got to pull, we need to be pulling. And workers need to do that, and they are. They're standing up. So.
Yeah, and it's Local 98's a great example. They're very resilient. IFPTE locals have been very resilient. In addition to the elimination of collective bargaining rights, obviously the union dues deduction, the way we collect our resources was eliminated. It came out straight out of our paychecks. And, we had locals like 98 and 777. Some of these locals, they were ready for it, man. They hit the ground running. They started collecting through e-dues overnight. It was really, really impressive. And then, at IFPT at the international level, we actually went out and we're working to get e-dues. We have an e-dues system set up now at the international level that our locals can use to go collect dues from each individual member, no longer having to rely on the employer, the federal government, to collect their dues anymore. quite frankly, I mean, moving forward, I know Gay and I have talked to our locals about this a lot. Don't go back to the dues deduction. Collect your dues through e-dues, particularly in the federal government, because Trump has laid out the blueprint, and if you get another rogue, I don't think we'll get another person as bad as Trump in there, but hopefully not. If we do, we're all in trouble. But he laid out the blueprint. So you get another anti-union president, they're just going to go ahead and eliminate dues again. So e-dues is the way to go, and Local 98's been. Yeah, they represent their members well, and they were leading the way on that. I mean, I don't think they lost a single member. They just overnight,
Really?
overnight they were.
They had it ready.
Yeah, they were even signing up members ahead of time through dues. Yeah.
All we needed to see what was going to happen, and then they turned it on and started doing it. So it's really good.
They've done amazing work.
My last question, and happy to talk about anything else, but I know that we need to get back into the convention hall. But yesterday or the first day, it's all kind of blurring together. But President Schuler outlined a pretty ambitious agenda for organizing new workers and for turning out voters in 2026. So in 2026, she said that the Federation is going to push out 2 million more people to the polls than we did in 2024. And over the next 5 years, she set a goal for federated unions to organize 2 million more workers into the labor movement. What do you make of those two goals for the labor movement, the affiliate unions of the AFL-CIO, and how is IFPTE going to participate in that, and how are y'all going to support other unions participating in that?
Yeah, no, they're both great goals. We're on board with both of those goals. We have a robust and aggressive organizing program, and we are organizing even in during the Trump era, anti-union era. So we're organizing, particularly in the nonprofit area. We're organizing law firms across the country, progressive law firms. We're organizing in Gay's sector, the energy sector, particularly out in California. But yeah, we're growing, and we're fully committed to that, and we're going to do our part. Getting the voters out, union families out, we're going to do our part too. We are fully a part of the AFL political program. We do release staff, we get our locals to release staff, we ask our locals to release members to go to some of these battleground states, these key states, to get union voters, union members and their families to the polls to vote for our labor endorsed candidates. And as some people may be surprised, not all the time the candidate's a Democrat. Sometimes the labor-endorsed candidate's a Republican. We don't care what you are as long as you're pro-labor. So we are fully committed. I think the 2 million goal, 2 million extra union voters, is necessary because we have an administration and a corrupt Department of Justice that's trying to rig the elections as we speak, and we know they're trying to prevent people from voting. They gutted the Voting Rights Act. They don't want people of color to vote. They're going to have, who knows what they're going to have, who they're going to have at the voting precincts. I mean, right now in D.C. we have National Guard all over the city of D.C. Who knows if they're going to be deployed or not to the voting precincts come election days. And ICE agents all over this country. We put nothing past this administration when it comes trying to steal this election coming up. Not only this midterm, but the presidential election 2 years from now. So we are fully on board and committed to the AFL program.
Yeah. So one thing that's shocking to me is in my home state of Tennessee is all the gerrymandering that's been done off cycle just to silence the voice of folks that the underserved communities. It's kind of shocking, but then it started happening. It's everywhere. I will say too about folks in union, we're ripe for this. People are ready. Workers are saying, I've had enough. I didn't know I needed a union. I know I'm not going to get in trouble at work, so probably didn't think I needed one. They're realizing the bigger picture, and that is that we all have to stick together and that we all have to have a unified voice against everything. Corporate greed, the political machine that's working against us. Everybody is starting to really, they're not just starting, people are saying, what can I do to make a difference? And, the first answer is to sign the card, join the union, unify with the bigger, greater labor movement on what's going on. to move it forward.
Is there anything else that y'all wanted to talk about before we break?
I'll just one other thing about the lack of legally protected collective bargaining rights. Your union, the union still represents you. It may be non-traditional ways, but the union is up in Capitol Hill fighting for you. The union, like our union and every other union, we're filing lawsuits. It seems like every week. We have so many lawsuits. Gay and I have lost track of all our lawsuits we're involved in. I mentioned the one earlier on birthright citizenship, but we have so many lawsuits you lose count. So, and then at the grassroots level, we all organize together, and we put our feet on the pavement, and we go out at the grassroots level, and we do what we have to do at that level to get our collective bargaining rights restored, and to fight to represent our members, and that's what we do, regardless of what the law says.
Matt Biggs, Gay Henson, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at AFGE.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just finished listening to interviews with the president of the State Federation of Labor in Oklahoma, Forrest Bennett, and interviews with the international president of IFPTE, Matt Biggs, and the secretary-treasurer of IFPTE, Gay Henson. Now, we will be, soon we'll be talking to the national president of APWU, the American Postal Workers Union, and we're going to be playing a couple of speeches from the AFL-CIO convention last week. We're going to have that and more on today's show. If you would like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. You can also send a text message to the same number or send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. A huge source of funding for us comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should think about getting your local, your district council, your region, or your international union to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that. I will also be adding a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. As most of you know, we're not media professionals, just diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class in the American South, and we hope that this project can make a difference on that front. We can't do it without you. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Now we're going to have our conversation with the national president of the APWU, the American Postal Workers Union, Jonathan Smith.
I like to use an example of prohibition. Remember prohibition? It was illegal.
Right.
And they said, we got to stop this. All these alcoholics is killing our children. And somebody on Capitol Hill became a genius. And they said, if we tax this, we can get filthy rich.
Right.
So they decided to tax it, and they made alcohol legal. So then people came to them and said, well, what happened to the alcohol? What happened to the children that we had to save? They said, oh, well, we'll raise the age to 21 to make it legal to drink, right? So the thing about it is, this is about big money. This is about business. This is about greed. You know, we need candidates that's about the working class. It's about families needing a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food in their stomach. And that's what the unions represent, and that's what they represented for me. You know, oh, we already going?
Well, you was already going, so I was like, well, I'll go ahead and I'll start it.
I'll just tell you.
But I mean, we can wait until I really start it.
We can go because I'm rolling. When I'm rolling, I'm rolling.
Yeah, that's why I started recording. I was like, okay, we're rolling. So we did a cold open is what they say in the biz, I think.
And if I had an opportunity to, I've been going around talking to my members, and I've been telling them who I am as a man, not as a president and all that, because I don't believe in the titles, and I am spiritual. I wouldn't call myself religious. And a man is what he does, not what he says, right? And I think one of the biggest problems in the labor movement, that we have politicians leading a lot of these unions and not labor leaders. So what do I mean by that? A lot of them like to go around and poll their members and see what the most popular opinion is. And whether they agree with it or not, that becomes their opinion. That's a politician. What is a labor leader? I need to see what we need to be doing, what needs to be done for us to be successful. And now it's my job to convince you to go in that direction. But to be a labor leader is hard work. To be a politician is not. So, if we get back to the good old days of unionism when we were our strongest and we fought for issues that really needed to be fought for, because one of the things that I'm realizing as a labor leader, this new generation of unionists are not familiar with the labor movement. They wasn't around through the civil rights struggle. They wasn't around during the women's suffrage. They wasn't around with the protests against Vietnam. In fact, we used to walk around when I was a kid with all these different unions on our back proudly, iron workers, sheet metal workers, I'm proud to be that. You don't see that no more. So what we want to do is we want to blame this young generation, and we want to say that they don't care. But how do you expect them to know what they don't know because you haven't taught them? And if you don't blame them, then you're forced to look in the mirror and look at yourself. And nobody wants to do that. I choose to look in the mirror and say, have I done my part? Because I'm a product of a grandfather from Macon, Georgia, that worked in the tobacco fields. In fact, when I was born, I never left the hospital with either parent. I went immediately into foster care. I was in foster care for the first 10, maybe 11 years of my life. But my grandfather, being disgusted in Macon, Georgia, of the racism, the bigotry, and the hatred, took a chance to go up to New Jersey and got into the Postal Service as a custodian. And it changed his life. All of a sudden, he started hearing about rest days. Wasn't no rest days on the tobacco field. He started hearing about vacation. What the hell was that? He couldn't afford a vacation. He about to lose his mind. Seniority rights and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, even then, he was a postal worker. He wasn't a clerk, he wasn't a mail handler, he was a postal worker. Whatever needed to be done, and he was glad to do it because he felt like his job was to serve the American people, not to serve himself. And one of my grandfather's greatest prides was he had perfect attendance. Now, I'm definitely not my grandfather, but but you could see the work ethic that came from the right. But what it did was, he didn't come from Macon, Georgia to Newark, New Jersey for himself. He came for his children and me and my sister, his grandchildren, so we can have the opportunities that he can only dream of. My grandfather might have been close to the age I am now when he first got the opportunity to vote. Didn't get a chance to vote until 1965? Vote right. So my grandfather, most of his life, didn't have an opportunity to participate in democracy, which is a vote. So it saddens me how many people, especially people of color, that don't participate, saying it does not matter. Let me tell you what my grandfather told me. My grandfather said never in his life has he had an opportunity to vote for the best candidate. He's always had to vote for the best of the worst, hoping to get a little progress. Well, I'm the result of that progress. I'm a result of that struggle, of that opportunity. So I guess you could say I got it bad. I got it real bad, because if I had it in my head, it would be a problem, because I could get too smart for this thing. If I had it in my heart, I could get too frustrated and walk away. But where do you go when it's in your DNA? It's who you are. It's who you were meant to be. It was my grandfather teaching me that it's a responsibility of the least of us to stand up for each other, because the most of us will never care. So,
I mean, there's so much there that that you were talking about that I'd be interested in hearing more about. But you mentioned the importance of the importance of labor leadership, and we're among probably, it's got to be the 1,500 kind of foremost leaders in the labor movement in the country right now. We're on day 3 of the convention. What are some of your thoughts on the convention and what's been talked about so far, and the reaction of the delegates?
Well, me, and I'm just speaking for me, it's always good when the working class can come together, because we can do together what I can't do alone. One of the mistakes I think we make is to be perceived as an arm of the Democratic Party. We have to fight for issues, not parties. We have to fight for issues that put food on our table, a roof over our head, and clothes on our back. Sometimes we get caught up with party and not issues. Because listen, I'll give you an example. Barack Obama thought he was a very good president, and he was a technician when it came to making a speech. But after the bailed out of the United Auto Workers, could you tell me what Barack did for the working class? So, we have to be honest with ourselves and look at their record and not their party. I'm, full disclosure, I'm a registered independent. And I think that makes me more powerful on Capitol Hill, because it doesn't give a perception from the time I walk in the door that I'm leaning this way or I'm leaning that way. I'm there to talk about the issues that affect the people that I represent, the issues that affect the working class. And a lot of times we're not having honest conversations. It's already, the resolutions, it's already written, the opinions are already written. It's a hell of a production, it's a hell of a show. But does it get us to where we want to go? Because until we get a working class party, till we get a working class politician, because people are starving for change. I'm from New York. Mandani represented, he came out of nowhere. They said where he came from. He represented that change that people are looking for. People are looking for people that care. One of my mentors, Mo Biller, one of the greats of APWU, to stop expecting people to care until they first know you care. And I've always kept that in mind. First, we got to show them we care. And you care about what you do, not what you say. We make some beautiful speeches. Some of them got me close to tears. But what are we going to do after that? So I love the AFL-CIO. I love what it overall represents. But some of the minutiae, when you get into it, I don't know about, because I refuse to be an arm of any party. I'm an arm of the people and what the people need.
We've had on your predecessor on the show a few times, and a lot of this is really reminding me of Brother Dimmenstein. As he was president, I'm curious what sort of things you felt like you learned from his presidency, and what are you hoping to do to build on? Like how much do you see yourself as like kind of being in the tradition of like a Dimmenstein, or how much of an influence was he on you coming up?
Well, I don't know if I admire Mark. I admire and I agree with a lot of the stances he took. We did have some disagreements. The approach to the 10-year plan and his, I wouldn't say love, but his respect for Louis DeJoy. We could not agree where it came to there. Our approach would have been totally different. But here's what I can say about Mark. Whether I agreed with him or disagreed with him, I believe that he believed what he was doing was the best for the American Postal Workers Union. And as long as I can honestly believe that he believed it, and it wasn't a political stand, it was something that was deep within his heart, then I can support that. Sometimes when you know it's purely political, you think it's the political move to make. I couldn't agree with that. Even though I didn't agree with some of the things that he did, but I believed that he believed it, and he was willing to fight for it. In that way, we are alike. When we see something, when we believe in something, we're willing to fight for it. We're willing to push the envelope as much as we can. And we got to realize that we have a very naive labor movement right now, because we got a lot of young people coming into the labor movement where we have failed to educate them about the greatness of the labor movement and how important the labor movement was to develop the middle class. The middle class that we're getting to the point where there is no middle class. There's rich versus poor. A lot of people like to talk about Trump and say Trump is racist. Trump is not racist. Trump is classist. Because if you're black and rich, you can get in that room. If you're Indian and rich, you can get in that room. So his color is green. It don't have nothing to do with anything else. And his whole history, being from New York, you can see it. It's rich versus poor. It's the have versus the have-not. I think you're doing him a favor when you minimize his position as being a race position and not a class position, because it's a class position. Even when he was running for election, he went to try to counter what Biden was doing to a non-union shop in Michigan to be able to push. He would be there for labor. What labor? It wasn't, and the thing about it is, it's not like he's even trying to hide his position. The thing about it is, when we're going to wake up, it's kind of remind me of that movie. Is labor walking around with their eyes wide shut? He's not even trying to hide what he's trying to do. And he has so many people so infatuated with his agenda of making you believe that he cares about you, even though his actions say something different. What was the old saying? I forgot who said it. Was it Lyndon B. Johnson that says that if you can make them believe that the worst of them is still better than the best of us, they'll give you anything in their pocket. Trump is an expert in making them believe that the worst of them is still better than the best of us. And I'm not talking about black, because it was black against white. I'm talking about the working class. The worst of the rich is still better than the best of the poor, and that's what they're fighting for.
We're talking to the president of the American Postal Workers Union, the national president. One of the big things that the APWU is concerned about right now is defending the efficacy of vote by mail. Can you talk to us a little bit about that efficacy? Because there's a lot of mistrust among, at least there's a lot of ginned up. I don't actually know how much there is. If you just kind of go to random people, do you trust vote by mail, yes or no? I don't know how much real distrust there is, but there's a huge attempt to make people distrust it. Why should people trust voting by mail?
It's simple. It works. It works. I mean, you can complicate the conversation and tell all the... It used to be a point in America where evidence meant something. But now everything is about social media and image. And there is no evidence that support that you cannot trust vote by mail. This broad fraud that they're claiming, they have produced absolutely nothing. Let me tell you something. We take extraordinary measures, especially in election time, because we take our responsibility serious to make sure that when you mail an envelope, that it gets to where it wants to go, especially at election time, because it's the core of our democracy. The problem with our democracy was not vote by mail. The problem with our democracy is 90 million people decided not to participate. And when 90 million people decided, as close as the margins was, that is your problem. That's what you need to concentrate on. The mail had nothing to do with that. The mail encourages people to participate in democracy. Why are we discouraging participation? If I'm an airplane pilot and I'm in the air, can I vote? I can't get to the poll. Why should that person opportunity be eliminated? If I'm an emergency responder, don't you think it would be important for me to respond to that stroke or that heart attack? And the fact is, I got an emergency that takes me away from the poll on that particular day that I'm supposed to be there. Why shouldn't they have the opportunity to participate? I'm a student away at school, but I'm starting to learn about what this country is about and what democracy is about and what government is about, and I decide I want to participate. But because I'm not there to get to the poll in my home state, because I decided to go to school someplace else, why shouldn't I have the opportunity to participate? Why should I be an elderly that has given everything to this country, right? And now I'm moving around on a walker. I might be carrying an oxygen tank, and you saying I should go stand in line for 2 hours in order to participate in my opportunity to vote. What about the soldier across seas? That this soldier that needs some encouragement, that they're in a war that they don't understand and they might not be there, but they need something to keep their spirits up. So a letter coming from home is very important for them to get. And they can't participate in the election process because, of course, they're not home at the time. So vote by mail gives all these people an opportunity to participate in the process. Now, here's the thing. If vote by mail was good for us when we were in our worst condition during COVID, why wouldn't it be good for us now when everything is all right? When we needed the Postal Service at the most to participate in democracy, there was no problem with vote by mail. They said, whatever you got to vote by mail. And even now, the president, the same person that's telling you not to vote by mail, casts his vote by mail. So now the evidence, when you look at the evidence, what they're saying is one thing, but what they're doing is something else. So we do not want to be politicized. Do you think the postal worker cares whether there's a Republican or a Democratic ballot in that envelope? Because our commitment is to serve America. And America is comprised of Republicans, Democrats, independents. We don't care. We want to make sure that everyone has a right to participate in democracy. Our concern is not about who won the election. Our concern is, will vote by mail make 90 million people want to participate too that didn't vote at all?
Well, one of the numbers that y'all have in some of the sheets that you're giving out at the convention is that 99.9 something % of ballots were received within 7 days of them being put in the mail, and there was a 99 point something percentage that was
99% of it, over 99% of that mail was delivered within 3 days, right? Over 97% was delivered within 5 days. So that's, like I said, it goes back to the evidence. So you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I might have that backwards, but whatever it is, it's up there in the upper 90s, right? So the problem is, it goes back to what I was saying, evidence. The evidence shows that it works. Where is this mass fraud at? Where are these people that they're hauling off to jail for all this cheating that they're supposed to be doing? It does not exist. But we're in an era now where all you got to do is start a rumor and people will run with it. Why? Why would we discourage people from participating? We want people to participate. You know what this reminds me of? This does not work, they're saying, right? What's the alternative? Get to the poll? What about the person that can't get to the poll? But does this sound familiar? Remember the Affordable Care Act? We're going to give you something better. Don't worry about it. It's going to be so good, you ain't going to know how to act. And they wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, and they wanted to repeal it, and thank God for McCain at the time that came in and said no, he voted it down, and they still going after it. But even though they're going after it and they're not eliminating it, what has been put in place to replace it? See, and that's what they're giving you. They're giving you, let's get rid of this with nothing in its place. You know, so we will not let political pressure. We will not let people's opinion. You know, what's the old saying? You got a right to your opinion. I won't fight against your right to be wrong, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm supposed to do to serve these American people.
The last thing that I wanted to ask you about is, you know, before we started the conversation, you said that you don't even like to call it a crisis because it's so manufactured, it's not real. But there's, you know, sort of like with the vote by mail stuff, there's a real attempt to paint the post office as financially incompetent, unable to do the job that it's supposed to do financially. How does the APWU respond to those sorts of attacks on the Postal Service, and how would the APWU have the Postal Service respond itself to try to bring it out of debt?
Well, let me say, I'm not going to say that it's not real. There are some financial difficulties, but there's solutions. That's why I won't call it a crisis. It's a situation. And there's simple solutions. Now, if you look at the debt ceiling, which the Postal Service is at $15 billion and they're maxed out, their borrowing authority is tapped out. But if you go to the rate of inflation and you calculate inflation, because the debt ceiling was set in 1992 at $15 billion, at that time the expenses of the full Postal Service was $45 billion. That's what it took to operate the Postal Service. You fast forward the clock to 2026, the debt ceiling is what? $15 billion. But the expenses of the Postal Service is $90 billion. I don't think you'd have to be a mathematician to feel out that's not going to work. But if they were to go with the rate of inflation from 92 to now, the debt ceiling would be $35 billion, between $35 billion and $40 billion. Easy fix, right? If Congress had their problems, it'd be an easy fix. Here's the big problem. Congress has a problem of conscience. They can't figure out if the Postal Service is a service or a business, because in the Constitution says it's a service. It's a not-for-profit service. This is why no matter where you live, we have a universal obligation to get you your mail. So fast forward the clock. Now the investment piece. Now we only can invest by law. Well, be a service, but the law limits what we can invest into treasury bonds. If we had the opportunity to invest in more aggressive funds, and I ain't talking about crazy, something more reasonable, we would be right now $700 billion in the surplus. But we're only able to invest in treasury bonds. So we take our pension benefits and we take our health benefits and we can't invest in it, and we're only making now. We have something called a thrift savers bond where employees can invest in, right? So if the employees in the Postal Service right now was in a thrift, if they could only invest in the G fund, over the last 10 years, they would have only made 2.7% profit on that interest on that money. But if they can invest in the C fund, which is a more aggressive fund and the type of fund I'm talking about, but not overly risky, they have made 14.8% interest in that money over the last year, quadrupling what you can make. This is my simple way, in layman's term, to explain to them what the problem is. Now, the last piece of that problem is the civil service, which we hardly have any civil service, and civil service disappeared back in, I believe it was 84 or something like that. We don't have hardly any more civil service. But at that time, we were the Department of the Postal Service, and we were under the Cabinet of the United States. Now that we the U.S. Postal Service that you know today. But they had to ask themselves a question. How are we going to make sure that the civil service benefits are paid? What portion was the Postal Service going to pay, and what portion was the government going to pay? Now, you know when you gave it to the government, who was about to get screwed, right? So now they make these calculations, not regularly recognized calculations, to make the determination of what is the pension liability for the Postal Service. If they were to make acceptable, regularly, ordinarily understood accounting arithmetic on calculating the civil service portion. Right now, the federal government will over the Postal Service approximately $80 billion. So you're talking about the $700 billion to be able to invest properly, the $80 billion in civil service. Do you see a crisis? There is no crisis. We're talking about something to raise the debt ceiling as simple as that, which they could do tomorrow, which they don't have no problem in other situations doing it, raising the debt ceiling. So that's why I'm saying it's not a crisis. The solution is right there. They just will not do it. So it's a very simple fix. I have gathered the other unions together with the carriers, the mail handlers, and the real carriers. We have sent a joint letter to Capitol Hill saying put these fixes into place and stop acting like the Postal Service. Now, if the Postal Service is a business, then let us invest like any other business, because every other business have a right to invest their venture funds the way they want, but we don't. But we are a business? No, we are service, and we don't have a right to do it. So if Congress figure it out in their mind that we're a service and not a business, they'll stop putting business requirements on us to make a profit and let us be the service that we've always been for 250 years and serve the American people.
One other fix that I know that at least, I can't remember if it was the union's position or if Demonstein just liked it, but postal banking is something else that I have really been a fan of. Is that something that the APWU has a position on right now?
Well, postal banking would be great, but again, Congress, because of a legislation, will not allow us to do it. They said that we can't go outside, and let's be honest, these banking thieves and these check cashing places lobbying Capitol Hill and putting billions of dollars in these politicians' pockets. So right now, I'm just talking about the short-term fixes, the immediate fixes that can happen. Long-term, with the Postal Service being one of the most trusted government agencies, and it's not like it wasn't something that we haven't done before. We've done it before. We were very successful doing it, and it's something that we know we can do. But there is something in the new legislation that they put forward. They said that we can enter into agreements with state, local, and tribal governments, but the Postal Service has not even made an attempt to enter, such as pay your bills at the post office, more than just What about us? We process passports now, but what about our passport? What about TSA processing at the post office? What about fishing license, hunting license? All these things we could do at the Postal Service, and the Postal Service is not making an attempt to do any of this because they don't want to do it. Because a lot of these politicians talk out of both sides of their mouth. They're against privatization and for privatization as well because they want to do pseudo-privatization. We could do the in the city mail, but that across the road is where the money at, so we'll contract that out because the contractors want to get to where the logistics operations is and where they can make the big money. This is about greed. It's always been about greed, and every time they hire a new postmaster, the last one, DeJoy was on UPS and had stock in UPS. So they said, we got to get rid of DeJoy. We're going to bring in something better. So now they bring in Steiner that was on the board of FedEx, and Steiner that went and tried to destroy Waste Management. That his claim to fame when he was on Waste Management, that he took the union participation from 33% to 20%, but then he comes in there and he says, I really support the Postal Service, the mission and the unions in the Postal Service. My grandfather told me something a very long time ago. If it looked like a duck, walk like a duck, sound like a duck, it's a duck. I don't care what he says because I've seen everything that I need to see to know what he's about.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the lobbyists trying to kill postal banking. I mean, it reminds me a lot of the direct file opportunity that some people had under the Biden administration, and how H&R Block and all these tax services want you to, they just want to be able to be a middleman when, the government knows how much money I owe it. Why can't it just tell me? It's totally nonsensical, and very similar dynamics with the postal banking. Why can't the post office bank? One more thing that there are a lot of letter carriers and postal workers that listen to the program, and one of the things that I hear from them about something that could potentially help right the ship financially within the Postal Service would be decreasing the number of managers. They said that they've told me that 30, 40 years ago there was one manager to 30 or 40 workers, and now it's like 1 to 6 or 7. Is that something that the APWU has thought much about, or would be interested in seeing happen, or no?
Well, that's a small part. My position is simply this: I don't tell them how to manage. They don't tell me how to union. And people want an opportunity for upward mobility, and they might want to go into management. My thing is to deal with those that decide to stay with the bargaining unit. And the numbers speak for them. This is what I'm more concerned about. I'm concerned about they got numbers of fraudulent mail going through where it's going into billions of dollars. Another savings, and wouldn't have to get rid of anybody, whether it be management or the bargaining unit. I'm worried about the Postal Service refusing to settle these grievances and let them go, and they paying triple, which is costing them billions and billions and billions of dollars.
That report,
it wouldn't be an issue of getting rid of anybody if they deal with the fraud that's right in front of themselves. If they just followed the contract and the requirement of the contract. And here's the thing. One of the biggest problems that we have in the Postal Service, and I know it's a little off topic, but I think this is important to share. A lot of people complain about the workroom environment. They say it's a hostile workroom environment. It's nastier than it's ever been. Now, I talk to a lot of my retired postal workers because I don't want to repeat history. And who will know Boston? Because they are the ones that really made the sacrifices that we enjoy today. A lot of people don't talk enough about the 1970 strike and how it was an illegal strike and they walked off the job, and how as important it is to the important workers today. It was the greatest show of unconditional love in Postal Service history. But what's important about that is this. I asked them, I said, how was the workroom floor when you was working, when you really had no rights? Your rights were very little, right? And they said, it was fine. We all stuck together. Now you fast forward the clock, from 1970 to 2026, the workroom environment is horrible. Oh my God, I can't. What is the difference in the workroom environment? I'm gonna tell you what the difference is, and I'm not telling you no secret that I haven't talked to the Postal Service about. When I came into the Postal Service in 1987, when I came into the Postal Service in 1987, even if I never wanted to be in management, but even if I wanted to be in management, it was not even a thought until I was on the job 10 or 15 years. Everybody understood that when they came in. It was not even a thought that I was going to go to the day shift. No, I knew I was going to the night shift. I was at the bottom of the totem pole, right? Now you got people coming in thinking, oh, I'm going to go to the day shift. I got 4 kids and all that. That ain't the Postal Service problem. But here's the thing. Because you worked 10 to 15 years, it was not easy for you to tell somebody to do something that you knew that you could not. You had experience at the job. But the Postal Service mission was for the Postal Service, the mission of the Postal Service, to make sure that we was the greatest Postal Service, delivery standards. We had people that cared about the job. Fast forward the clock. The Postal Service mission has changed. Their mission is servitude. Can I find an employee that's just willing to do what they're told? So now they hire this newly created PSC that just got converted to full-time regular. They don't have no experience. They never worked on it for sure. They make them a supervisor. In fact, some of them still living at home with their mother and father, but they come to work and they're the boss. That's a recipe for disaster. That's like you telling me I drank all night, I grabbed my keys. I don't even need to know the rest of the story because I already know whatever it was, it didn't end up good. So when you take a child and make them the leader of men and women, that's a recipe for disaster. Now here's the interesting part, and buckle up your seatbelt. I had this conversation with the Postal Service, and the Postal Service didn't disagree. But when you know what the Postal Service said? That employee, I would love to hire him, but they're not putting him for supervisor. Because they realize how they're treating these supervisors. I got so many supervisors that go over into that, want to come back to the craft, and I say, you done made your choice. I can't let you come back. I got some people that's waiting to get converted and stuff like that. So I try to educate them, be proactive and not reactive, saying if you go, you know you're not coming back. So I understand the situation and I understand what's going on in the Postal Service, but some of that is if we get back to the unity that we had before. You ever seen the show Locked Up, where it's a show that come on TV where the prison guards, they might be 1 guard for every 100 inmates, right? So one day I was watching the show and he said, well, how do you walk around here and you keep control of 100 inmates? He said, I don't keep control of nothing. I do what they give me permission to do because I don't have no gun, I don't have no weapon. If they decided to take over this prison, they could take it over. Well, it's the same thing with the postal worker. If you decide to stick together, there's nothing that management can do to you on that workroom floor, but you have given them the ultimate weapon, and that weapon is division, because you will not stick together. You can see a supervisor cussing out your coworker and you won't say a name. But if your coworker cussed out that supervisor, 10 of you will give a statement. Unity and solidarity has always been our strength, but it ain't their fault because we have failed to educate them what union is about, but we will bring that back.
Well, brother, I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the conversation. I want to be respectful. We've been going already 34 minutes, so I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything else that you would want to leave us with before we let you go?
Oh, I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you in the future, and we are definitely going to stay in touch because we got a lot of work to do.
All right, brother. Thank you.
The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you tuning in, folks. If you're tuning in online, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe to the channel, or give us 5 stars if you're listening to us as a podcast. We're coming up on the end of the first half, but find us online at the Valley Labor Report on YouTube or Facebook to continue watching. We've got a great second half of the program lined up for you. We're going to be talking to Don Villar, the Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. We're going to be talking to Minneapolis unionists who fought back against the ICE occupation and more. So make sure you stay tuned. But before that, we're going to play a couple of speeches from the AFL-CIO's convention last week. We're going to be playing the speech from the Labor's International Union of North America's International President, Brent Booker, and from the International Association of Machinists' International President, Brian Bryant. That is his real name. They're both talking about immigrant rights and the labor movement. So really excited for those, for you to hear those speeches. We're going to play those, and we'll be right back.
Brothers and sisters, I'm so honored to be in Minneapolis with all of you today. There isn't a more powerful place in the world to bring our movement together. When our own government turned this great union city into a war zone a few months ago, the people of Minneapolis, more specifically the labor movement here, stood up and showed what we've all been saying for years, that when working people stand together, when solidarity is strong, there's nothing that we cannot do. They showed us what it looks like to refuse to be divided. It's their courage and resolve that we must emulate to defend and strengthen our movement and to build the path forward for our country. Look, there's probably a few of you that might be surprised there's a white dude from the building trades who's the head of the immigration committee. For those of you who don't know about LIUNA, know this. We're a proud union founded in 1903 by immigrant laborers who came together because no other trade would take them. And after years of immigrant workers trying, it was Samuel Gompers and the AFL who stood up and allowed us to join your movement. Then and now, it took everyone to protect immigrant workers on the job, and I carry that with me every single day. This is about freedom, fairness, and the basic human right of every worker to get home safely at the end of their day. Yet right now, this administration is spending 91 times more on immigration enforcement than we spend to enforce every single law meant to protect workers. In fact, we spend more on ICE than all but 15 countries spend on their militaries. Imagine if our government invested that type of money in creating opportunities for working people and enforcing labor standards and enforcing laws meant to protect workers. Instead of investing in the hope of the American dream, they're doubling down on fear and investing in a dystopian nightmare. More often than not, their hit list isn't violent criminals or people who wish to do harm to America. Instead, it's the hard-working men and women who keep America running. It's our members. Look, they've stated that their goal is to arrest 3,000 people a day, and they won't let anything get in the way of that. Constitution, not due process, not ruining lives by tearing apart families and destroying local economies. They just want to disappear as many humans as they possibly can with the goal of 100,000 bodies a night in their elite buddies' for-profit detention centers. Now look, I'm not usually one for audience participation, but listen to me on this one and work with me here, all right? Stand up if your members was arrested and detained on the way to work or taking their kids to school. Stand up if one of your members was arrested or detained after going to an immigration interview or an appointment. Stand up if you've had a member or someone you love in your community detained while going about their daily life. Now take a look around this hall. Every one of us standing right now is picturing a brother or a sister, a face, a name. So the next time someone asks you, why are unions engaging on immigration issues? I want you to picture this hall, because this is all the explanation we need for why this is our fight. All right, you can take a seat. Thanks for going along with me. I got a little bit more of that later in the show, but just thanks for that. I know who I pictured. It's a member right here in Minneapolis. We'll call him Sam for right now. Sam immigrated here legally in 2017 to get away from a repressive regime. He's done everything right, and he's the hardest working member of his crew. That's how his contractor tells it. In January, Sam went to his normal court check-in for his work authorization, which he has until 2031. He was tackled in the hallway by ICE agents and put on a bus to the largest detention center in Texas, where he was forced to sleep on the floor in the cold with dozens of guys. When he arrived, they sorted the prisoners into groups indicated by the color of their jumpsuit. A blue jumpsuit meant you had no criminal record. An orange one meant you had a misdemeanor of some sort. And a red jumpsuit meant you had committed a violent felony. In this massive detention center, overcrowded with thousands of men snatched off the street in Minneapolis, Sam saw two guys in orange suits. Every other single man in that detention center was in a blue suit. Think about that. The entire place was just workers whose only crime was being brown or speaking another language. We spent almost a week working with the legal team, his family, and his employer to find him. And when we finally did, and the detention center guard came to tell him his lawyer was on the phone, you know what Sam said? They must have the wrong guy. He didn't have a lawyer. They brought him there anyway. And that's when Sam learned that someone did care. It was his union. Every other detainee in blue jumpsuits were deported that night. But Sam was flown on a plane full of ICE agents back to Minneapolis, where our organizers met him and got him home safely with his family. Dozens of LIUNA members have a story like Sam. But I'll tell you this, because it's his face that I picture when I need to fight. And I do, because we haven't gotten them all back yet. These are the stories we need to tell. These are the stories of our unions, and we're going to hear a few more later in the program. But let me tell you this first. At the end of the day, it's pretty simple. 1 in 5 workers in our country is an immigrant. So when you attack immigrants, you attack all of us. And if there's one thing I know about labor, it's that we don't like people fucking with our families. It's why we've trained thousands of activists and organizers from 60 unions in all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. It's why we're bargaining strong contract provisions to support our immigrant members and providing legal defense when their rights are trampled on. It's why we've distributed hundreds and thousands of Know Your Rights cards in 32 languages and workplaces and communities across the country. We're not leaving anyone behind. We're incredibly proud of the work that the AFL-CIO has done under the Schuler and Redmond leadership team. Many of you here today have played an important role in that work. For the past year and a half, the priority of the Immigration Committee has been to equip our movement for readiness, rapid response, and resistance. For us at LIUNA, a 123-year-old organization founded by immigrants, this has meant training hundreds of leaders in each of our regions through every structure we have. It meant having immigration and immigration rights be a topic we encourage in our local union halls. So members hear firsthand from us what's happened to their brothers and sisters. And so members who are at risk know their union has their back. If you haven't trained your people yet, it's time to start. In the exhibit hall, there's an amazing crew who can walk you through all the support the AFL-CIO can provide. I know I'm over time, but I'm almost done. But I want to reflect on why our campaign against mass deportation is called Frontline Solidarity. It's because no one's coming to save us. The courts, they're not going to block attacks on workers. The measure of success for this moment, to meet this moment, will be how we show up for each other day in and day out on the front lines. Brothers and sisters, we were tested right here in the Twin Cities, in LA, Portland, DC, Chicago, Charlotte, and everywhere in between. We all know our movement isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Let me say this. I've never been more proud to be a part of the labor movement than right now. We all saw the footage of mass agents, tear gas, tanks, and Black Hawk helicopters right here in our host city. Lined up in between them and protesters, you also saw a line of people in this t-shirt. This t-shirt right here. Thousands of union members wearing a Union Peacekeeper t-shirt, standing strong together in the battle of our time. We all need to be this. Because to survive this, we'll have to come out stronger, more determined, and more united than before. So let me ask you, are we going to let them come for our families? Are we going to stay united in this fight? We must, every single day, because when we fight,
My husband and I, Maximo Lindoni, we've been together for 25 years and 21 years married. What we went through this last year was something I never would have ever anticipated.
I was born in Manila, Philippines, and I came to the United States when I was 12 years old. My mom petitioned us, me and my siblings, to give a better life. We came to the United States as a green card. Last year, I think it's my 4th time going back in the Philippines.
When we landed coming through, I think is when it just got surreal for me. They pulled us aside and they held us, longer than 10 minutes, which was alarming for me. So when they told him that he was going to have to stay longer and that I was going to have to leave, that's when I I didn't kiss him like normal. I didn't give him a hug and say goodbye because I was like, I'm coming back. But then that went into days and then weeks.
I was held in the Seattle airport for 5 days. When I got transferred to Northwest Detention Center, I saw how they treat people, how much they didn't really care who we are there. It was a dark place. They made me feel like I don't belong here.
I've known Max for 8 years, so it's kind of a big blow when, hey, got picked up by ICE. Excuse me? So we just started making phone calls. I didn't meet a lot of no's. It was a lot of, holy crap, let me call somebody else. Things moved. It was a little bit of a in the beginning because we were moving. We moved some stuff around and made some stuff happen so we can, keep Max's job and then keep his in healthcare. It was a big effort.
As soon as the news came across my desk, we did whatever we could. We just knew that somebody and their family needs help. So we just did what we could on the fly.
Immigrant rights advocates are rallying in Tacoma today. They're demanding the release of a local union member, Maximo Landonio.
Free Max now! Free Max now! Free Max now!
Let me tell you what. It's those sisters and brothers that formed our union, the immigrants of this country, and is the reason why we're here today, standing behind all the people that are in this facility illegally. This is not America. This is not who we are. We are the United States of America. We are better than that, and we need to be better than that. Thank you very much.
Even though I can't talk to them, I was being told by my wife, your union is there for you. They'll be here all the way, which they did. I got released in July. I never thought I was ever gonna step out of that place, and I'm here.
I don't even know how to put it in words. It's one of those profound moments in your life, this eureka moment of we did it. Wow.
I helped do much more than I ever anticipated. Because it's not just a union do, it's true solidarity.
You never know what impact you're going to have until after, but you still got to show up and you got to just go there and help. We call it solidarity, but we're there to take care of people. That's the core union principle. That's why we have contracts, is to take care of people. This is another extension on how we do that.
Me having support and people, especially my IAM union members and the Filipino community, that really helped me. It gave me strength to not to give up. It shows me what really the union is for their members and for their people.
You got to build community with the Filipino community, with Tango Migrante. If you're not building community with them, you're not doing it right. You're going to get a lot more support than you think you are. The community is a lot stronger than you think it is, and a lot of people care more than you think they do. Some people that I would have never expected cared showed up in ways that I never would have expected, and that gave me a lot of hope. It has been an incredible experience that I hope many more people don't have to go through. We shouldn't need to have groups that have to go protect our fellow human beings in situations like this, but if people need it, call. My brother called. I had to answer.
Good afternoon, sisters, brothers, union family. My name is Brian Bryant. I proudly serve as the International President of the IAM Union. Look, until this current administration, if you asked whether immigration was an issue for the IAM Union, the answer probably would have been no. There have always been immigrants in the IAM Union, and as you heard in the video, our union was proudly founded by immigrants. Our union has always embraced those who want to make a better life, not only for themselves, but their families. But last year, we found out that this Trump administration was going to go after all immigrants, or anyone they believed that looked like an immigrant, and just like David, anyone that stood up for immigrants. And once Trump was elected, our IAM Executive Council knew it was only a matter of time before one of our members was illegally detained by this anti-immigrant administration. And as they started changing the rules of the game, the inevitable happened. They picked up one of our members. And that was a real mistake, sisters, brothers, and family here. Because when you pick a fight with the an IAM member, you pick a fight with all of us. So we are here today to tell you Max's story. We are also here to tell the immigrants, to reaffirm that immigrant rights are truly workers' rights. And that the IAM, and not just the IAM, but all of our unions are truly a union for all. And change happens in our country from the ground up. And the same is true for change in our unions. And I hope that two things are more clear now. One, our union value, what our union's values are, but also what value our union brings to the struggle and justice for immigrants. We know that the struggle will be long, it will be a long one. So we have to celebrate our victories along the way. We are so proud to have Max and his wife Crystal here with us today, and I would like to welcome them to the stage now to feel the love of this entire labor movement. Max, in the video, you mentioned that at the detention center that they made you feel like you didn't belong here. Well, the labor movement wants to be sure that you know, that you absolutely know that is not true. Max, you belong in this country. You belong back in your shop in Washington. You belong to the IAM union, but most important, you belong to this labor movement. And now, sisters, brothers, family, it is my honor to introduce our member, Max, who'd like to say a few words to all of you here today. Thank you.
Sí se puede.
Thank you, thank you.
Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Good afternoon to you all, my brothers, sisters, and siblings. I am honored to be here today. First, I want to thank IAM Union International President Brian Bryan for his leadership support. Also, to my sister, Nicole Fears, IAM Human Rights Director. And especially to my wife, Crystal. Whose strength meant so much to my family during one of the most difficult times in our life. When I was detained, I was separated from my family and faced an uncertain future. But we were not alone. My wife fought for our family, and the entire IAM union stood with us every step of the way. To all of you, thank you. Your support gave us hope when we needed it the most, and showed me the true power of solidarity. It reminded me that when we stand together, no one has to face these challenges alone. I am grateful for everything that IAM Union did
for my family, and proud to be part of the union that believes every worker deserves dignity, respect, and voice. Solidarity forever.
That's it for the first half of the program, folks. Thank you all so much for spending some time with us this morning. Just a couple of reminders before we wrap up. You can go to labornotes.org for some free and low-cost trainings. We're proud to remind folks that we are part of Means TV, a worker-owned streaming cooperative. You can subscribe to Means TV with our discount code, TVLR, and receive 20% off either your first month or the entire year. There are lots of great programs on the site, including a documentary covering the unionization of a poultry plant in the South and the Amazon labor union campaign. If you're not on our email list, you're missing out on exhaustive weekly updates of the goings-on of labor in the South and Southern employers being held accountable for injuring, killing, discriminating against, or stealing from their workers. You can subscribe at TVLR.fm. We're heading into overtime, where we will be hearing a speech from SAG-AFTRA President Sean Astin at last week's AFL-CIO convention and playing more of my interviews from there. So we hope that you find us online to keep listening, but if you don't, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next week. This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, and now broadcasting across the Mason-Dixon in Chicago and Minneapolis. Coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text message at that number or leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. We have got a really good interview for you with Annika Court. She is a employee at the Chicago Museum of History who just unionized. After her interview, we're going to be playing a speech from the AFL-CIO convention by Sean Astin, president of SAG-AFTRA, and then we will be back to tell you about the rest of the interviews. Hope you enjoy. Can you give us your name and the union that you're with?
Totally. My name is Annika Court, and I'm with the Chicago History Museum Workers United, part of AFSCME Council 31.
You were just on a panel at the AFL-CIO convention talking about your organizing campaign. Is this your do you have much of a history with unions, or is this kind of your first encounter with the labor movement?
I have a long interest in unions, but this is the first union that I have been part of. Yes.
How does that feel?
It's very exciting. It's sort of, I've always been interested in the history of labor organizing, and it's something that I get to do a lot with at the History Museum. You know, I do a lot of reference work in the library where people are kind of asking questions about their research and that sort of thing, and I love taking the questions about labor history. So it's exciting to be part of something that's happening right now.
Y'all were able to win your union. Have you finished negotiating your first contract yet?
No, hopefully we are nearing the conclusion of it, but we are still in the process of bargaining.
And even though you're still in the process of bargaining, you've been able to win a couple of things, or at least push the boss back on some of the concessions that they were trying to implement even without negotiating. Can you tell the audience about that?
Totally. Yeah, so one of the things that they did in retaliation for our union formation was reducing the library staff entirely to part-time, which meant we were going to lose our health care, and so we were reduced to part-time for a long time. We had, I believe, 9 months of working part-time, and then we fought back against this with ULP and also a public campaign. So we were doing rallies and telling the public about this, and we also were going to the press. And once it got picked up, I think it effectively shamed the institution into rectifying this, because, you know, it's so symbolic of sharing history. If you cut the library, we have to cut our hours, and the access to our collections are cut. It's a clear call to action as soon as you hear about it.
Yeah. What made y'all want to start organizing in the first place?
We were experiencing a lot of understaffing, so our job duties were growing all the time. People were leaving and not being replaced, and so you would end up doing 2 or 3 people's jobs for the price of one. And we had, just in general, like a kind of vindictive, punitive leadership, and we were feeling generally disempowered. I think something that was happening a lot was that we had so much responsibility. For example, for the care of our collection items, you know, hundreds of years old, and we have so much responsibility, so we're blamed when things happen, but we aren't given the support to make sure, so we're, you know, calling for additional support for our collection storage and that sort of thing, and then not being able to reach the top decision makers, and so we needed kind of this voice.
Well, I really enjoyed your speech on the panel. I thought you did a great job. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Is there anything that you would say to workers who are not organized, who are maybe kind of scared of organizing, in part because of what you went through? That's a difficult thing. What would you tell them if they're thinking about organizing?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. I think what became clear to me was that we have a very clear story where things were bad at the museum, and we organized and things got better. I think the Chicago History Museum tells that really well. And I would say also that it was clear to me that we were getting fired unexpectedly before the union, and then when firings came as retaliation, the people who were best protected were the people who were most vocal about their union support, because it's such a clear legal case of union retaliation. And it also, the more you organize, the more that you support these things, the more protection you have in the solidarity of your fellow workers.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
When I was a boy, I walked my first picket line, and since I've marched with garment workers and longshoremen, with metal workers and baristas. Few things in this world make your heart beat stronger and fill your eyes with tears more than those moments of pride that flow when you stand up for people who work hard and find themselves saying in one voice, no more. No more greed. No more recklessness. No more pushing until tomorrow the fairness that belongs to us today. When we say we will not give in, we will not settle. In all of the job actions, Labor Day functions, political campaigns, lobbying, and more, The AFL-CIO has been for me, personally, a towering beacon of labor power, worker muscle. I've marveled at its righteousness and deep influence in America, and now I get to be here and know you and work with you. I called my wife Friday night to share my first thoughts about the AFL-CIO's convention, and I said, this is it. This is how we fix what's wrong. This is how we make things right. I am in awe of this place, and I am indebted to all of you for your example and your inspiration. My name is Sean Astin, and I'm the president of SAG-AFTRA. And along with our delegation, we represent 160,000 of your closest friends. Our members are film and television performers, background actors, stunt performers, singers, dancers, pilots, puppeteers, voiceover artists, video game performers, influencers, recording artists, broadcast journalists, and more. If you're alive on planet Earth today, you know us. Before becoming SAG-AFTRA president, like my mother, Patty Duke, before me, I was a delegate at my own union's convention. Well, first I was a Goonie, and then Rudy, then a Hobbit named Sam, Bob in Stranger Things, and Doug in 50 First Dates. And then I was a national and a local board member. I've served on dozens of committees. At the Executive Council meeting on Friday, I was wondering, how many tens of thousands of hours does this committee represent? I saw dedication on Friday, and I saw strong leadership. Liz and Fred, I'm incredibly proud to be a part of this organization under your leadership. And to all of you fellow first-timers at this convention, I am proud to start my AFL-CIO journey with you. I pray that our idealism and moxie only grows over time. I can't wait for us all to find ways of supporting each other as we represent our members. Our convention theme, with you, unions changing lives. Standing on this stage on my mother's 113th birthday, honoring my mother's legacy, with humility and gratitude for the opportunity to add my voice to the moment, I am born again labor. And I couldn't be any more changed by unions, and I couldn't be any more with you. Every time I see my members in need, when I see the pain and awfulness that exists in this world, as I anguish about injustice, I will steel myself with the knowledge that being connected to the AFL-CIO is about linking arms with greatness and having ever more opportunity to do something to be of service. As president, first and always to my members, and now extending the blessing of that opportunity to grow bonds of fellowship with the leaders in this room and our members around the world, and to ensure that SAG-AFTRA continues to exist in sacred partnership with the AFL-CIO and everyone who's dedicated to advocating for the plight of workers. Finally, mindful of the broadcasters, our embattled broadcasters that my union represents, who are in the fight of their lives, I say that I love my country. I love my freedom of speech. I love my freedom to assemble, rights that every one of our organizations count on for our survival, rights paid for with blood. If we don't defend those rights together now, we will lose them. Our members deserve the truth, the whole truth, and the objective truth that comes from trained professionals reporting. Our members deserve the best information available about the issues that affect them, to make the best informed decisions for themselves in our labor movement. We're going to need everyone in this fight. And now, Lord of the Rings. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. the ones that really matter. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass, and a new day will come. And when the sun shines out, it'll shine out the clearer. Those are the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good left in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Our members, their families, our communities are the good in the world that the AFL-CIO has always and will always fight for, and I will fight with you all until the end of time. Si se puede.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed that speech from Sean Astin. I know that I enjoyed it when I was in the audience. Hopefully, some of the stuff, some of the feeling that you could get in the convention, you could kind of pick that up. I'm really excited for this next interview that we're about to play with Don Villar, Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor, because we've been kind of talking around the Pope's recent encyclical on AI. And I've been wanting to talk to somebody, particularly I've been wanting to talk to a Catholic about it because, I'm not Catholic, but I've got a lot of respect for the tradition. And I was really excited when he put out this encyclical on AI. I think it's needed. And I think it's valuable for our social institutions to comment on things like this that are really threatening to upend our society. So I was appreciative of the encyclical and was really excited to talk to somebody about it. Don Villar is a Catholic, a member of the Catholic Labor Network, and, as I said, Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. We talked to him about the encyclical, but also about his career coming up in the union. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Brother Villar. All right, we are joined by Brother Don Villar, the Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. Brother, thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome, Jake. Good to see you.
You were just talking about you got your start in broadcast. Can you talk a little bit about coming up as a unionist and what made you want to get active in the labor movement?
I spent 25 years in broadcast news in Chicago. Actually, before that, I was actually a member of SCIU. I worked as a security guard during college in downtown Chicago. But I was always a rank and file member. It wasn't until actually after our 98-99 strike lockout, we struck for 2 days. The company locked us up for almost 3 months. That I started becoming more involved with my union. I became shop steward in 2004, a few years after that. And in 2007, I negotiated the first contract on behalf of the newsroom, my fellow news writers, editorial folks at ABC in Chicago, against Disney. And it was the first time that, for a long time, that we turned things around. Every contract before that, we were always giving something up. For the first time, we didn't, and part of that was because I was organized. I got everything, pulled the membership and just built solidarity in the unit, and did that, and then that's how I got involved. And actually, during in that first bargaining with Disney, ABC, you see the power dynamics. Here on our side of the table, we have 6, 8 union members. And their president, their leaders from around the TV stations around the country, and you got ABC, Disney, and they got an army of lawyers and accountants and bean counters and just all these folks besides the managers and supervisors. Just that power balance in that room. Here's this group of folks workers who are facing this this machine called Disney, and I saw the power dynamics there. And then actually after that successful negotiations, I decided to go to law school. So I became a lawyer. I went to law school in Chicago, Loyola Law, while I was still working full time at Channel 7 at ABC, but also being involved in my union. And then when I graduated because I wanted to be more aware of like labor law and strengthening or sharpening my negotiation skills and bargaining skills and advocacy skills. And then passed the bar. Finished law school 3 years later. Passed the bar, and then all this while working full time at ABC, and supporting my union, fighting for my colleagues. And then when I graduated from law school, I did some civil rights work, all while working for the union, working at Channel 7. So, and that's that. And because of that, I realized I got more involved. As I became more involved in the union, I became president of my union, my local AFL-CIO Local 41 in 2015. And we were organizing. I wanted to focus on organizing and building power. And the Central Labor Council recognized, all the work we were doing in broadcast news, and asked me to be Secretary Treasurer in 2018. So I've been Secretary Treasurer of the CFL since 2018. Yeah.
And so, we're here at the AFL-CIO convention where the delegates just voted to pass a resolution honoring Pope Leo and appreciating the work that he's doing for working people across the world. Can you talk a little bit about that resolution? Did you speak in favor of it?
Our president of the CFL, Bob Ryder, he spoke in favor of it, and I actually drafted it. Drafted the resolution, which we submitted to the AFL-CIO. And so Pope Leo took the name Leo, and by the way, Pope Leo is the first American pope, and he just happens to be from Chicago.
A lot of things going for the Chicago folks.
A lot of things. And he took the name Leo because in honor of Leo the 13th, who wrote this encyclical in 1891 called Rerum Novarum. That encyclical was the first encyclical recognizing the importance of labor, and also social justice, and how families. And this is written in 1891, the height of the Gilded Age. Mm-hmm. Workers were working nonstop, 7 days a week, and this Pope in 1891 he writes this encyclical saying, hey, bosses, companies, you can't be grinding workers grinding workers down. You got to give them a day off, give them a weekend. And at this time was the whole fight for an 8-hour day. And actually, that encyclical was written in response also to 1886, the Haymarket in Chicago. Here's this Pope seeing all the events that were happening in Chicago and around the world, and he wrote that encyclical sort of like addressing, we need, employers, quit being jerks. Quit being brutal. Quit trying to, enslave. And actually, we just got away. Slavery was abolished, so the businesses in business class were, where can we get cheap labor, right? And let's treat these people like they're expendable, like they're cogs in the wheel, and that they don't have dignity. So in 1891, Pope Leo the 13th writes this encyclical saying there's dignity in work. There's dignity in these workers, and pretty much saying that, look, workers deserve a union. They deserve to come together and mutual aid and protection to fight for dignity and respect, better wages and hours and working conditions. The same thing that the labor movement we fight for every day. But the other thing is families and workers need that time. Besides work to live, they also need time to be away from work, to take care of themselves and their families, and to rest, and to leisure time. So, because if we're always working, we're going to be broken. So, and since then there's been many encyclicals carrying on from the Catholic Church, from the popes, about that, the dignity of work, the dignity that we all deserve some dignity, we all deserve respect. And now this Pope, Pope Leo the 14th, he carried on that message, because we're in this, actually it's the same as 1891. It's a different Gilded Age, right? Back then they were dealing with those robber barons. We're dealing with tech bro barons, right? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these folks, and addressing the new Gilded Age. And that's what this encyclical does, because again, the same issues: dignity of work, dignity of of workers, of all of us, and that we deserve, to be treated with dignity and respect. We deserve good wages, and just all that we can to survive and support ourselves and our families.
One of the things that I noticed at the beginning of the encyclical is he's responding to an attack that the Catholic Church gets, that the labor movement gets a lot too, which is that the labor movement should just stick to bread and butter, wage and hour concerns, benefits. The labor movement should not get involved in politics. We should not get involved in public policy. We should stick to just representing our members at the bargaining table. And the labor movement's response to that has always been that we represent the whole worker. And similarly, the Catholic Church gets these attacks from people that say the Catholic Church should, you saw Tom Homan say the Catholic Church should mind their own business, and he's supposedly a Catholic, which is kind of crazy. And so, can you tell us a little bit about how the Catholic Church responds to these charges of, stay in your lane, tell people how to get to Jesus, and don't talk about what the gospel requires of Christians in society?
It's about basic human dignity, right? And remember, work is part of everything, right? We work to live, and work is part of the human experience, and the Catholic Church sees the wholeness of a person. It's not just work; it's everything else, and that's what they're addressing. Human dignity is the ability to work, to be able to take care of yourselves and your family. But if you can't find that work, and if like laws are there to prevent that, or like what we're seeing with the immigration crackdown. The net result, besides, deporting, so many people, you've also forced millions of people underground who are now being exploited, and their human condition is now being eroded. They've lost all dignity. They're suffering, and I think the popes. And that's the same for all workers. I think when not just immigrant workers, but all workers. We have to sort of see people at where they're at, right? And I think, and to some extent, I think Tom Homan, the federal government, they look at families like as long as you're supporting their infrastructure, or you're contributing your value to them. That's all they're looking for. But then they don't see that not everybody is going to be a tech millionaire, or not everybody is a Wall Street, a hedge fund, or not everybody, is. Not everybody's in the middle class, right? So, I think the way the church looks at it, and I think the way that labor movement also, like we're all, working people, and we're all in different phases of our world, of our society, and that's why it's like that when you stay in your lane, it's the whole morality thing, or the whole work thing, it's more than just work, or the whole faith thing, it's more than just faith. It's human dignity, which includes work, which includes being treated with respect, housing, caring for the sick, caring for those who fall in the margins, and that's the whole gamut. And work is just part of that. So and that's part of the whole. I guess called faith, right, or what the church addresses. And you think about the people who go to churches, the parishioners and the congregation, and all these folks who go to church, they're workers, right? Not all of them are billionaires or millionaires.
Right. Very, very few of the people that go to church are billionaires.
yeah. Most of them are just working folks, and they go to church because, it's it offers them some hope in the message in the gospel, like blessed are the poor, blessed are the weak, and to some extent that's the same thing in the labor movement, right? Like we're there for the folks at the margins. The labor movement has a broad spectrum of workers, but we're also there for the folks every worker. Right.
And so, given that the Catholic Church's position is that, yes, the Catholic Church rightly has something to say about civil society, about politics, and about public policy. So he kind of opens the encyclical with that, and then the rest of the encyclical is sort of about trying to apply Catholic social teaching that began with Rerum Novarum to this AI technological revolution. What are some of the things that he said that stuck out to you in the encyclical, and what are you as a labor leader in Chicago taking back to your members and to the public from this encyclical about AI?
Yeah. I think the message that Pope Leo gives is not just for Catholics; it's for everybody. And while it's that doctrine impacts all folks, and part of it is this, creating a new culture. I mean, I think he approaches like, okay, we got two ways to do this. We could either create the Tower of Babel, or we could rebuild the city of Jerusalem.
Yes.
And we saw, I mean, for folks who know it, the story of the Tower of Babel, they were, man was trying to reach the heavens to be just like God, and it ended disastrously. Right. But we're rebuilding the city of Jerusalem. People, people were working together collectively to rebuild that city of Jerusalem, and they worked. They took everybody into account, mutual aid and protection. And actually, that story, it sounds like the labor movement. When we work on a work site, right? When we build something, we come together and plan and do that. Meantime, unlike the Tower of Babel, where it was just one, we want to be bigger than God, or we want to be masters of the universe. Well, that sounds similar to what a lot of the tech bros want.
It really does. It's eerie.
They want to build the Tower of Babel like Jeff Bezos wants to fly, and Elon Musk, they want to go to the moon or to outer space, and leave the world behind. And I think that was the mentality, But I like that those examples. We could either go that way or this way, and I believe in this moment we need to rebuild, and especially the labor movement, and I think we could find a partner with the faith community on this, because they are tending to all the people suffering every day who go to church. And I mean, most our churches in the cities or in poor communities, they are tending to the wounded souls. And these are folks who maybe they're dealing with job loss, they're dealing with financial challenges. And what is the hope for them? And to some extent, I mean, the encyclical offers the hope, because there is a roadmap on how we could make the world a more just place, but you could also find the hope, and I mean that's why we work closely with. There's a lot of alignment on dignity and hope for workers too, in the labor movement. So
I've really enjoyed the conversation, and that, I mean, the allegory to comparing our situation now to a crossroads. We can either build a Tower of Babel or we can build a New Jerusalem. I mean that's such a powerful metaphor, I think, for where we are and what the technology could do, and what the productivity gains could do if the people who build it are forced to consider working people and the rest of society, rather than just trying to make themselves like God. I mean, like you said, it's not just for Catholics. I don't think I'm not a Catholic, but I got a lot out of reading the encyclical, and I would encourage other people to do that too. You mentioned the outreach from the labor movement to the faith community. The AFL-CIO has a program called Labor in the Pulpit that you're very involved in. Can you talk a little bit about that program?
Mm-hmm. I get Labor in the Pulpits. It's engaging our faith community, churches, mosques, synagogues, Catholics, Protestants, our Jewish sisters and brothers, our Muslim siblings, engaging them throughout the year. Actually, mostly during the Labor Day weekend, where we have an opportunity. We speak at churches and mosques and synagogues and temples to talk about faith and work. I mean, how the connected, how our faith life and our work life are interchangeable, are connected, and it's such a resounding message. Again, I think about when we go there, and I've spoken at least half a dozen churches in Chicago around Labor Day about faith and work, and it's amazing the reaction from folks coming up and just recognizing the connection between faith and work. and the importance that we build together, we work together for common ground, and because there's a lot of folks. I mean, again, folks who fill those pews, they're working class people, and that struggle is real for them. And hearing that message, I think, really lifts them up and inspires them, especially like in Chicago. Because like the Labor in the Pulpits program, I mean, it started in Chicago, and we continue to do it. We've been doing it year after year, and I think we do about 100 religious services around Labor Day every year. Reaching out to the community, and that partnership between faith and labor is so important. As labor can't do it alone, and like in the encyclical. The Pope Leo's encyclical, he said, labor can't do it alone. He said there was a time when labor could carry the water, but now in this time, because of everything that's lined up against us, we need to work collaboratively with so many other, partner with a faith community, partner with other communities. So.
Brother Don Villar, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Jacob. It was good meeting you.
It's great meeting you. Moving right along, we have next, we're going to be talking to some unionists from Minneapolis. First up, we're going to have two rank and file members of the Office and Professional Employees International Union in Minneapolis about how unionists in Minneapolis fought against the ICE occupation. And then we're going to play an interview with Jeanette Corselius, another member of OPEIU, but she just got back from a tour of Europe encouraging financial institutions over there to divest from Palantir and other ICE contractors. Really important work. I'm so proud to know her and proud to be able to share this interview with you. All right, we're joined by a couple of OPEIU members here in Minneapolis. Can y'all introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Rachel Brautager.
My name is Anthony, and I'm a member of OPEIU Local 12 here in Minneapolis.
What's your position with the local?
I am on our executive board. I am the public utility sector representative.
We were talking earlier about people deciding to kind of take the plunge and get more involved in their union. Can you talk about what it was that made you decide to go from being just a rank and file member to taking a more active role in your union?
Yeah, so a lot of it for me started last year, and I ended up getting elected as a union steward and went to my first steward training, and that kind of snowballed into me becoming a member of the executive board and getting more involved with the labor movement. But for me, really, it started with just looking at the world and realizing that so much of it was not the way that I thought it should be, and seeing the way that people were struggling, even when they were doing everything right. They were working their jobs, they were, paying their bills, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and still not able to live, the kind of quality of life that I think people deserve. And for a long time, I didn't really know what to do about it, and I just felt very much like, I'm one person. Like, what can I do against these, monstrously large, incredibly uncaring and cruel systems that we find ourselves living in. And I just decided I was going to start trying to find the ways that even if I couldn't change the world, I could make a difference in my corner of the world. And that kind of led me to the labor union or the labor movement, because labor, I think, is one of the best ways of amplifying your voice and your power to fight for the change that you want to see in the world. And I've been really fortunate. OPEIU is very good at investing in their membership, investing in training, and uplifting their voices. But to me, it was important to use we're very lucky, I think, when we're covered by a union. We've got protections that most of workers in America don't have. That's not to say that we have enough protections or that, if you're in a union, then, magically life is fine. But we do have a level of protection that most workers in the United States right now do not have. And I think that having those protections, like having that solidarity, having those structures that support us, means that we should be leading the way to help all workers, and lift all ships or whatever with the rising tide, because if we can't do it with everything that we have, how much harder is it going to be for those people who don't have the protections that we have, don't have the support that we have? And it just felt like if I have these privileges, then it's my responsibility to use them.
What about you? You're a rank and file OPEIU member, but you're also a union staffer, and so that's, definitely super involved in the labor movement. What was it that pushed you to take that step?
Yeah, so I got my first union job when I was 16 years old. So really I came up in grocery industry. UFCW 663 I was, a union member for over a dozen years, in a number of different stores. And so, my dad and mom had me when they were 16 years old, and my dad's first job when he heard that, my mom was pregnant, went out and got a union job at a grocery store that I ended up working at when I was 16. So it was just kind of a part of who I've been for a really long time. But I wouldn't say I really got active in labor until later in life. I actually really just cut my teeth as an anti-war activist for a really long time. I'd done a lot of Palestine solidarity work for, the last 10 years. And really, about 9 or 10 years ago, as part of an organizing effort at a grocery store that I worked at, we unionized that place. It's here in Minneapolis. So that's kind of where I started. And then, about 5 years ago, I got a job at a new grocery store, got very active there, was a union steward. We organized a really, really militant contract campaign that ended up in a really successful strike campaign. It was a 98% strike authorization, won to my knowledge, the highest minimum wage of any grocery store in the country with a union contract. And that came naturally, genuinely. It was people couldn't pay their bills. People were saying my electricity got shut off, and my natural instinct as a person is to say we need to fight back against this. So I think my flow into labor out of anti-war activism was just very natural in terms of what was in front of me, and through that I happened to become a staffer, which I swore I'd never do. But I'm proudly on staff with the local that I really, really cherish and appreciate the members of. So yeah.
Welcome to the union bureaucracy.
Yes, I am happy to own the label. Yeah.
You were talking about the how sort of naturally it flows from and so I always find it interesting, kind of where people start and where they end up, because I sort of started similarly more political. I was in a little bit different sort of politics. I got politicized in 2015, Bernie and everything like that, and so I just kind of started doing Democrat stuff, and I was not super happy with that, but I didn't know, but I still had I want to make people's lives better, and reading about the labor movement really inspired me, because as you're I think people like us have a vision of a society that's more utopian or better, a kind of long-term horizon. But unlike with, in my opinion, so many other forms of activism, with a lot of other, with knocking on doors for a congressional candidate, you either win or you don't, and if you don't, you didn't really make anybody's life better, right? And that was there. I didn't knock on doors for any winning candidates at all. All the candidates that I knocked on doors for lost, and at least at that point. And I was bro, I don't think I can do that. I'm not I don't have the fortitude for it. Whereas in the labor movement, every time you're moving towards that long-term horizon, like every grievance that you win, you've made somebody's life better. Every contract you win, you've made, so I find it so much more easy to like stay motivated and engaged.
So I just super quick on that, like I talked about like the strike campaign that we ran really successfully, and this is a grocery store, so you don't make a lot of money in a grocery store. At the time I was making 17 something an hour. Minimum wage here in the city is 15, so it's barely above minimum wage. When we won our contract, shockingly a day after we authorized our strike, I hit the shop floor at 6 a.m. the next day for my shift, and I just literally walked around to everybody working and told them, right, we won. I told them what we won, and walking around and telling everybody, like, you're getting a $2.50 raise effective a month ago because we're getting back pay too, and then saying, like, you're still going to get your step, and then in 10 months you're going to get another, I forget, I think it was like $2.15 or something, and then a year later you're going to get this. And so, like, doing the math, saying, like, in the next, it was like 24 months you're getting $6.50 in raises. And for like people who are making $16, $17 an hour, like almost everybody I talked to was like, if they were not in tears, they were on the verge of it. And it's because, like, that's like how life-changing it is for people that, like, who are having their electricity shut off, right? It's hard to like compare that to other types of activism,
But then once you've been able to kind of build up that credibility in you as an individual, like within the union, but for the union in the community, then that power and credibility that you've been able to leverage in these kind of like bread and butter fights can be used in those other, in other forms of activism as well. And, being in Minneapolis, obviously, I think the first thing that people think of right now when they think of Minneapolis is the ICE occupation of the city and the labor movement. At least from where, being in Alabama, from where I was, it looks like the labor movement was really on the front lines of the resistance to the occupation. What was that like, being a part of that, and how did you react? How did your unions react?
It was, what was going on in Minneapolis was very traumatic, to be honest, but it impacted everybody. I don't know a single person, in my union or outside of it that wasn't impacted by the federal occupation in our city. It was something that in so many ways was like horrifying, because you've got a federal government who is, committing an act of state-sponsored terrorism in our city. And on the other hand, like, you've got community members and unions and coalitions being built and people showing up in ways that I've never seen them show up, right? So there's this like horror and this beauty all at the same time, and it's, I think, really reflective of the moment that we're in right now, because like in a lot of ways, in pretty much every aspect of life that you can think of, like, there's a level of horror right now. And the fight back, like, there's so much beauty in those moments, and seeing everybody come together. And I just, like, I think it's so inspiring, but there's still so much more work to be done. And I'm sorry, I'm losing the thread of the conversation there a little bit.
So I will preface my answer by saying, like my answer and response is like out of love as a labor activist and not out of like malice towards our labor movement. But I think like the reality is, like, people who weren't here don't actually understand what's happening here. It really can't be quantified. you and I were both in Washington, D.C. for the OPEIU Ed conference a couple weeks ago. And, there was like kind of like a resounding, like big applause and like thank yous, to everybody in Minneapolis and whatever from everybody. And like, it's appreciated and it's nice. And we had a conversation where I was like, this is really difficult because people are saying thank you and they're appreciative, I think, for things that they don't understand were happening here. The same with yesterday, like when we all went on the stage and, everybody was cheering, clapping, which again, I'm grateful for. I was like, I was on the verge of tears because I'm like, the people who are in this room that are applauding, I don't think they actually really can fully comprehend what Metro Surge was like. And so, yes, organized labor was certainly doing a lot of work and has been doing a lot of work. I think my critique of it would be it hasn't done nearly enough. And I think organized labor has put itself on the face of things in ways that it really wasn't responsible for. That's not to say that labor wasn't doing it, but I don't think that it was organized labor in the sense of like the Minnesota AFL-CIO, sorry. I kind of consistently see talking points from like more formal, organized labor that, this like idea of like nonviolent mass resistance. And I'm like, if you were in the streets, you knew that wasn't true. And I'm being told by organized labor that this whole thing is organized nonviolent resistance. And I've been tear gassed multiple times. I was tear gassed during George Floyd. I know it's not, I know that it's not as simple as that's what it is. And like, I've seen people kidnapped out of their cars while I'm in my car. Like I've seen a dozen ICE agents chase cars outside of my apartment, and that was a regular occurrence for how long? You would get an update on your phone and you would run outside in your sweatpants because there's a kidnapping happening across the street, and that was an everyday occurrence. And like the people that were showing up for that were workers, right? It's not necessarily people who are in labor unions, but I think like that's the question that labor has to answer, is that organized labor isn't just, right, like our unions that we have, right? Like workers are organized in their workplaces even if they don't have a union. And I think like that's kind of like the thing that kind of resonates to me is like the people that are like organizing in the streets, like they're workers too, right? They may not have an organized workplace in the sense of a union, but they were bringing those skills back to their workplaces. They were connecting their coworkers to these networks of mutual aid or whatever it is. And I think that's where the labor movement was really active, right? And like in those ways that like we don't really see or hear about, like, here or like in media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of the mutual aid, I was at an MFE event a few nights ago.
They're amazing.
And yeah, they said that I can't remember who this was if it was just MFE organizing this or if this was MFE in collaboration with the Labor Fed, but the labor movement got supplied like 3 million pounds of food to people who were afraid to like go to the grocery store or something, which was, I mean, like that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, in MFE, Minneapolis Federation of Educators, I mean, like they really are, in my opinion, and I think a lot of like progressive labor activists would say the same thing, is like, I mean, they are really kind of like the shining beacon of, like an organized, progressive labor union that, like they're bargaining for the common good. They're not silent on social issues, right? They understand like their labor union is about more than wages, and like they showed that, right? Like I did school patrol. That was a common thing that was happening. It still happens, but especially during like the height of Metro Surge, is you would patrol, and like that stuff was organized by teachers, right? Is like teachers saying like, hey, here's what's going to make our students and our parents feel the most safe. Here are the things that like might seem practical to you that's actually going to weird people out if we do this, right? And like that was organized by teachers, rank and file MFE members who were maybe not doing it like through formal channels, right? But like that's what organized labor is. It's understanding where the barriers are to like the bureaucracy of the thing that we work in, right? Is like finding workarounds to like make it work for people. And like MFE is so good at that.
I think it's a really good point, and I think also a fair criticism a little bit of the labor organizations in terms of like how they're discussing like the role in what happened, because unions do play a very important role in what's happening, but a lot of the organizing that we were seeing on the street level that made such a profound difference, the development of the rapid response groups, the grocery deliveries, the different ways that the community was coming together to help each other. It wasn't necessarily about going out and marching. It was people organizing around I see a need, and we're going to find a way to meet that need. And I think about programs like Haven Watch, that it started because a woman and her kids saw them releasing people that they had detained illegally just off out into the Minnesota January winter with no coats, no phone, no money, no way to get home. And we all know why they did that. And they saw, okay, we need coats. We need to be able to get these people in contact with their families. We need to get them home. And how are we going to do that? And that organization came out of seeing a need and finding a way to meet it. And I feel what labor organizations really need to be doing right now is organizing around how are we going to be meeting people's needs, because the reality is this isn't over, and there are so many things that are coming down the pipeline that are going to make life incredibly difficult for workers going forward, just in terms of living their lives and putting food on the table. And I think we need to be preparing to meet those needs as they come up, because if people aren't free to protest, if they are afraid to come out, if they are worried about putting food on the table, it's going to limit the engagement that we have, and we need all hands on deck in this. And if unions are a place where they can people can get help with getting groceries, get help with getting their kids to school, or whatever it is that they need in the moment of whatever's coming down the line, whether it's job displacements from AI or rising food costs or whatever it is, if we have to be prepared to actually meet those needs as they come up. And I think that's something that the community was really good at doing, and I think the labor organizations with the structures and networks that are already in place are a good way. It's a good starting point, and it's a good support, but it's definitely not the end all be all of what we need to be seeing.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Can you introduce yourself and give us the capacity to speak?
Jeanette Corsilius, JANETTECORCELIUS, member of OPEIU Local 12, Office Professionals Employees International Union Local 12, member of Twin Cities Democratic Socialists of America.
You just got back from multiple tours in Europe. Can you tell us what you were going there to do and what you were able to accomplish?
Yes, I went on a small 3-person delegation to Switzerland, France, and the Netherlands to push European financial institutions such as UBS, SNB, ABP, among others, to divest from ICE contractors, Palantir, CoreCivic, Geo Group, ACI International, and to engage with AT&T to drop the contracts with ICE.
Why were you doing that?
I was doing that because I lived through Operation Metro Surge here in Minnesota. I saw and witnessed my community be occupied by the federal government. Our neighbors were abducted, detained, and deported. Not just undocumented immigrants, but all kinds of immigrants, black folks who are descendants of slavery, Native American, First Nations, Indigenous peoples, and white allies. And I think that European countries are at risk for fascist takeover, just like the United States. And if their banks are interested in financing ICE here in the States, then they're going to try to do the same thing in Europe, and they are trying to. Thankfully, the Swiss Army and the police in the UK have not signed contracts with Palantir, and ABP, thankfully, before we even started the tour, divested $800 million out of Palantir. So I think that they're already proving to be very unpopular, and their manifesto is working against them.
When you went to have these conversations with investors, talking to investors and leaders of financial institutions is not like I'm assuming not a normal thing for you. What were those conversations like, and how did they respond?
So I spoke at UBS as a shareholder. Our organization on the European side that was hosting us and supporting us helped buy a share and other shares for other people to speak on multiple issues relating to the fossil fuel industry, as well as other human rights abuses. So I spoke in front of the UBS shareholders meeting, and to my surprise, I received applause from the shareholders for what I said. They really appreciated what I said. Unfortunately, the board of directors said that these are clients, and they gave some lukewarm, half-assed response that was a non-answer.
So you said that there were some, before your visit, there was some level of divestment occurring. Has there been anything further as a result of your visit, or are you still kind of waiting to see the results?
Yes. So another thing we did on the tour was we met with European trade unions and different political organizations, politicians, community groups, and concerned residents, and taught them lessons from Operation MetroSurge and how to resist ICE and how they should resist Frontex, which is pretty much like CBP but in Europe. The other thing is that we had a lot of press, even favorable press from right-wing conservative media.
Really?
And so there's been a big push. I know in Geneva and Lausanne, which are both cities in Switzerland, they're passing resolutions to stand in solidarity with us. They're pushing for divestment through their banks, and that work is going to be ongoing. So the tour wasn't the end-all be-all. It was to organize and to expose. We've been also able to expose, since we've been there, that ING in the Netherlands was also funding Palantir. And at one of the community panels we spoke at, a shareholder from ING was there. So we're hoping that ING will also divest like ABP did. And Jacob, you might be aware too, in the United States, a lot of pensions are divesting from Palantir as we speak. I know here in Minnesota, we have divestment that needs to occur from Palantir. I will say that we did divest 90% of Israeli war bonds, and that was a great victory for the Free Palestine movement here in Minnesota. I saw that Maryland just a week or two ago divested $65 million away from Israel. So as you might be aware, Palantir developed AI kill technology to genocide Palestinian peoples. And yeah, they work with ICE, and they're trying to work with different police forces. So it's really important that the labor movement get involved in this issue because, like they said in their manifesto, they want to whittle away at our civil liberties and our democracies. So we need to be engaged and support our membership and our society and the future of our democracy by pushing for divestment all around.
You were listing off some other places and states that have divested from Israeli war bonds. One of those states, I'm happy to say, as a person from the South, is North Carolina, really led in large part by UE, the municipal workers union, or the public sector union in the state, the biggest one. They really led the fight on that, and they were able to get a Republican state treasurer to do that. I mean, it wasn't total; it was like 70%, but I mean, I felt like that was a pretty incredible victory. Was Palestine Solidarity part of your tour, or was it primarily around like ICE and Palantir?
It was both. Though we were there as witnesses and victims and survivors of Operation Metro Surge, all three of us, Rafael Gonzalez, Sagir Shahid, and myself, are very active in the Free Palestine movement here. And so, and to be quite frank and honest, I mean, both these issues are linked. Why? Because, I mean, the imperial boomerang came back around on us, but also ICE and the various municipal police forces in the United States and the Israeli occupying forces, they all train with each other and they share tactics and techniques and strategies. So they're all one and the same, and we really need to call that out for what it is. And also too, like, the labor movement needs to kick cops of all kinds out of the labor movement. And also, I think it's important to note that Peter Thiel, who is the founder of Palantir, just fled to Argentina. What a Nazi move, a historically Nazi move, like complete and total fascist. So I think that's why even Republicans are like turning away from him. And I mean, his move is showing that he's deeply unpopular from both the Democratic and Republican parties. It's really just Trump and J.D. Vance that are really that have this really close relationship. But I think people are seeing the writing on the wall, and I know that we exposed this relationship really well in Europe. Like I said, we got a lot of media, legacy media, as well. And I'm proud of the work that we did. The work is not done. We're going to continue international solidarity movements and continue that organizing, because divestment is like not a one and done thing. I will say this, that we had some unions here in Minnesota that made sure when they went to their state conventions that they had statements that were, and resolutions that were more broad. For example, divesting from weapons of war and ecological destruction, so that you wouldn't have to keep going back and pushing, because I know they've divested from South African apartheid, and they've also divested from the war happening in Ukraine. So Palestine, the issue of Palestine shouldn't be so different, but because of Zionism, it is treated so differently. And we need to we just need to educate our members too, just on the basis of understanding where our pensions go as public sector workers.
Yeah, I mean, the labor movement's pension funds are really, I think, ought to be understood as a huge source of potential power that is, by and large, just totally being not utilized. and the labor movement is rather than looking at it as a potential source of power, is just looking at it as an investment and kind of only trying to get the highest returns for their members, which is great, and we want high returns as members, but surely, as a labor movement, we want to, when we have tens of billions of dollars of resources at our disposal, we want to kind of make sure that those are being used in ways that we would agree with. As you were encouraging people to divest, you mentioned that you were there in large capacity as as a witness and as a survivor. Were there any particular stories and testimonies from your firsthand accounts of having been here during Operation Metro Surge that were powerful and landed particularly well with the audience?
Yeah, not to speak for my comrade Sagir Shahid, but she was someone who was abducted and detained, and she could speak to that when she was on the tour. Rafael Gonzalez, who invited me on the tour, he is a Dakota and Puerto Rican descendant person, so he had great fears when this all started, but realized, just like myself, we have to fight back. We're scared, but we have to be out in the streets. And I know that he was on the front lines. My role wasn't necessarily on the front lines. I was organizing and for the general strike. I was helping with mutual aid. I was a patroller and commuter, so in a way, the front, that front line. But yeah, I mean, every day, especially since Renee Nicole Good got murdered and Alex Pretty got murdered as well, a lot of us felt like we could be next. And we really did show bravery and courage here in Minnesota, and I hope that our comrades who are fighting back in Newark, New Jersey at Delaney Hall can sustain the resistance, and I hope that other places in the country are getting ready. And I think there's so much more we could be doing as a labor movement to stop this, because are we just going to keep continuing what happened here all around the country, or are we going to band together, for example, go on a general strike, sustained general strike that would just completely shut things down economically and just stop this shit. So that is something when we were on the tour, we were talking about the May Day general strike of 2026 and 2028. And when we came back, it was not what we thought it was going to be, sadly. And even here in Minnesota, there were unions that didn't participate, and I really thought they should have. So, yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're not where we need to be. And I hate to say that, but I'm hopeful, and that's what our job is here as organizers. And the work that you do, Jacob, with the radio show and the YouTube channel is really great, because it's a form of education and exposure, and I hope that we can keep talking about these issues, but then taking action as well.
Jeanette, is there anything else you'd like to talk about while we have you?
Nope, that's it. Solidarity forever, comrades.
Really appreciate Jeanette taking the time to talk to us. I will say she's not able to talk about this, so we're not going to ask her any questions, but I'll note for the audience that she's been targeted by the Trump administration, had some of her personal belongings, her phone, laptop seized by Customs and Border Patrol, and the Center for American Islamic Relations in Minnesota is suing the Trump administration over their what they believe is retaliation for her actions, and really appreciate her for what she's done and what she's putting up with now. So, not a laptop. Coming up on the end of the program now, we have my conversation with AFGE National President Everett Kelly, Reverend Dr. Everett Kelly, and Dr. Kendrick Roberson, Roberson is the National Vice President for AFGE. We talked about the federal attacks on federal workers, the attacks on the administration against federal workers. And then after that interview, I had a conversation with the People's World labor reporter, Cameron Harrison, about his observations at the convention. So we got a couple of more interviews. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. And then I'll be back to wrap us up. We are joined by Dr. Kendrick Roberson, National Vice President for AFGE, and Dr. Reverend Everett Kelly, National President of AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees. Thank you all for taking the time to talk to us today. I appreciate it.
Jacob, it's good to be with you again, man.
Absolutely. Fantastic to be here.
You know, I'm a member of AFGE. People listening know that. And as I talk to, you know, a lot of stewards and leaders in AFGE who say that there are people that are coming to them that have gotten these notices from their supervisors that their union doesn't exist anymore, that their union doesn't represent them, and so they're really confused about that. And you know, what does AFGE have to say to people like that who are confused about the status of their union?
You know, I would say, first of all, that that's the intent of the administration, to confuse people. But at the same time, I want to alert people of this very fact. Can't anyone take you out of your union but yourself, okay? The intent is to confuse people, to antagonize people, and to frustrate people so that they want to get out of the union. But just remember, no one can take you out other than yourselves. That's why we have started this e-dues process, because when you're under e-dues, nobody in management even know who's in the union and who's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important for everybody to remember that our union existed before our contracts did, right? We got our union first, and then within our union, we were able to fight for these contracts, and we're going to continue to fight for them in the future. But through this process where they are trying to confuse our members, we have to remember that our union predates those contracts, and our union is still definitely here and still fighting for all of our members nationwide.
And even in the absence of a contract, I mean, our unions can still do so much. I mean, there are ways that we're going to talk about in a bit where our unions can still represent people officially, but even in unofficial ways, I mean, a union is just people coming together to make their workplace better, and you can do that whether you're recognized or not, whether you have a contract or not. Are there any really good stories that y'all have of unions locally or even nationally being able to win things for their members outside of the contract process?
Well, we got to understand that this union began in 1932. Okay? And in 1932, there was a few members that came together because they wanted to stop the same types of actions that's going on today. They wanted to silence the federal workforce. They wanted to downgrade the workers and those type of things. So the union was formed. It was formed to begin to lobby Congress, right, and others to be able to get rights for the federal workforce. And they've done that over and over and over again. Now, I must say we got a rogue in the White House right now that is disregarding any law, rule, or regulation. And so therefore, it points to the fact that it is vitally important that we do the exact same thing again, that we do stand up as a federal workforce and that we do stand together, because that's where our power is. We still are able to lobby Congress, okay? We still are able to fight for employees' rights, whether that's, and we're doing that. You know, we're doing that through litigation right now. And that's the thing that's going to turn this thing around. And not only are we doing it, but we are winning in these litigations. When you look at what's happening with the VA, when you look at what's happening with TSA, and now we are getting ready to do the same thing with DOD, I mean, we are winning, and this is what the union does for its members. It stand up for its members.
One of the things that y'all have mentioned is that, you know, AFGE can still represent people in procedures outside of like bargaining or grievances, and specifically AFGE can represent employees during the EEO process. And actually at my local, we just won an EEO case. I was talking to Abner about it yesterday. Dr. Roberson, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? How is it that AFGE can represent people in an EEO case in the absence of collective bargaining rights, and what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our rights are protected in various laws that we have gained access to over time. So for example, we have protections that we have through the Rehabilitation Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act, right? We have protections through the ADEA, which helps us, prevents us from being discriminated against on the basis of age. We have protections that are granted to us from the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that protects us from discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, religion, right? And so we have all of these protections, and they are coded in different laws. So even outside of our contract, when we see that people are discriminated against in the workplace, we can go through an EEO process that still makes sure that our people are represented. And here's one of the best things about this process. So when they take away our contracts, illegally we would say, right, they try to take away what's called our official time to represent our members. But under EEO, there is an actual policy under 29 CFR 1614 that allows us to have official time to represent members in EEO matters that is separate from our contract. So there is a block of official time that people can use to make sure that we are combating discrimination in the workplace, and we've been using it all throughout the nation, and like you just mentioned, we've been winning on it.
And, that's really important for people to remember, I think. And what are some of the cases? Are there any cases that come to mind immediately that AFGE is really, really proud of in the EEO representation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been winning well over 100,000 of damages that are going to our members right now, and that does not include our back pay benefits. That does not include our wins that restore leave or anything like that. And so in these wins, I think some of our biggest wins right now have been reasonable accommodation wins, where we see a lot of folks who are being denied their reasonable accommodation under this president. And this is very problematic for us because what it requires, or what it does, is it has people who are literally killing themselves to come to work and service the American people, and they're not being given the accommodations that would allow them to fully do their job while making sure that they are staying safe. And so we've been able to take a lot of those cases through the entire EEO process and win very big on behalf of our members.
And as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to talk about the court cases. Like you said, AFGE has been really successful. What are some of the cases that we're in the middle of right now, and how is AFGE arguing its case in front of the courts?
I will be quite frank with you. I can't discuss strategy, right, with you as it relates to those court cases. I will tell you that the big EEO cases where over 1 million federal employees stripped of their rights under the law based on this president, we're fighting that case. We do believe that we have a strong case. We believe we have a strong argument. And then come the case with the TSA, where TSA members was taken out of the bargaining unit. The judge ruled on our behalf. TSA tried to come back another way. The judge says, wait a minute, you can't do that. So that still is proceeding right through the system. We believe that we have a strong case there. Then you have a VA, okay, which the same scenario occurred. The judge ruled on our behalf, gave us a temporary injunction, and then the Veterans Administration decided they were going to be smart, and they said they're not going to do it. The judge hauled them back in court, said you're going to do it or we're going to hold you in contempt of court, right? And so we still have those stragglers out there that's still trying to disobey the judge. But we believe we have a strong case, and we look for that day in court. Now comes the Department of Defense, right? where we feel that we have a strong case there, and we're going to continue to pursue every litigation opportunity that we have to ensure that our members are represented. And like Kendrick said before, you know, this union has been around since 1932, okay? We didn't get a contract and bargaining issues until 1978, okay? But before then, we were still a union, and we are still going to be a union because our contract does not define us, okay? Contract is great, and we need it. Don't misunderstand me. It does not define us. What makes us so great is our solidarity. That's what the power of this union is, because even now, our members are standing up and sticking together, and that's what I encourage everyone to do, because in the end, we're going to win. And we just have to ask ourselves, which side of this do we want to be on, right? And so I encourage every person to stay a part of your union.
Y'all have anything else you wanted to add? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Cameron Harrison here. I'm a labor correspondent with People's World, and before that, I was a shop steward in grocery. I was a member of the UFCW, Local 876, Detroit, Michigan, and worked in grocery 10, 12, 13 years now. And here at the AFL-CIO convention, and having a good time so far.
Like Cameron said, we are at the AFL-CIO convention. This is day 3 of 4. He is leaving this afternoon, so wanted to get his thoughts before he left. You know, as the convention is coming to a close, you wrote an article about the first day of the convention that came out yesterday. Can you talk about what you saw on the first and second days?
Yeah, sure. So I came into this convention with a few questions that I thought were the most important questions facing the American trade union movement. The first one, organizing the unorganized, answering and responding to the question of union density, building up unions, new union organizing, what the Federation has in store for organizing new workers, but also organizing existing workers, and how the affiliates and locals and state feds are going to play a part in that process. You know, when I was a shop steward, a lot of my members, a lot of my fellow workers, when I first got there, didn't even know we were in a union. So what we had to do was reorganize them and bring that trade union consciousness back to the shop. So, you know, that's something I'm sure is in several unions. You know, a lot of my coworkers, not only did they not know that they were in a union, but those that didn't know they were part of a federation and didn't know that the federation was part, you know what I'm saying? Right. So it's having to retrain and reorganize existing members, but at the same time, we still have to bring new members and organize new workers into our movement. And so that was the big question for me, as well as what is the trade union movement's orientation towards the political moment we're in this country.
Really quickly before we move to that, and I want to get to it, I just want to say how much, you know, I really think that probably of all of the sectors, grocery and federal government are the places where it is the most, where what you just described about your shop is it. That's going to be more common in grocery and federal government than anywhere else. I mean, I came out of the federal government. I'm in AFGE, and that was the case in my shop. I had people that certainly, like you said, did not know we were represented by a union, much less anything beyond the local 1858 that we're a part of. You know, what does AFGE do on the national stage? What is AFGE a part of with respect to the AFL-CIO? I had to educate our local leadership on the importance of the Labor Council, because it had been so defunct that it was literally dechartered before me and a couple other sisters and brothers came along from a couple other unions, and so I had to do that education of the local leadership about the importance of, you know, not only coming together in our individual workplaces, but coming together in the community through the Labor Council and you know, by proxy through bodies like the AFL-CIO statewide and nationwide.
Yeah, but I think things are moving in a good direction. There's a influx of young workers our age. We are living a life in debt. There's not really the opportunities there for us that previous generations have had. I mean, the economy in the U.S. is so skewed towards the billionaires, the monopoly corporations that, it's very... What I want to say is a lot of young workers that are getting into the trade unions, getting into jobs, are want that militancy back. They read the stories. I read the stories of the organizing the CIO, the 1930s. I'm from Detroit, so the Flint sit-down strike, organizing auto, organizing steel is a big part of our culture in some ways. So those stories, it's shit. The 1930s and now aren't that different, and you heard that from Brother Sean Fain. He auto workers president. Talking about organizing the unorganized, bringing back that 1930s, 1940s spirit to the union movement, and I think that's really good. You got others like Jimmy Williams from the Painters organizing in the building trades, doing really solid work. Sarah Nelson. With the flight attendants organizing Delta, that's 40,000 flight attendants. So there's unions that are organizing the unorganized, and we just need a lot more of that. And I'm happy that one of the resolutions was a commitment to organize 2 million new workers in 5 years by 2031. Something that talking with other delegates, out in the halls at bars, is yeah, that's great, we agree. Now, how are we going to do it? What are the nuts and bolts? What are the organizing questions that we need to ask, not only of ourselves, but of our whole movement? How do we deliver the goods, you know what I'm saying?
And and I think the answer to that rhetorical question, I think right now, is that we haven't been given very many nuts and bolts during this convention of how are we going to do it. And like you said, I think that everybody agrees on the goal. The path forward is just a little bit unclear. You also mentioned that you had a question about the political orientation of the labor movement in the second Trump era. What do you feel like the answer to that question has been?
So I think it's mixed, but I think that's bound to happen, But something I think is a real bright spot, talking to Jimmy Williams from the Painters, hearing Sean Fain talking about political independence. And what I mean by that is the ability for the trade union movement to independently put its own stamp on the elections, to independently, chart its path, instead of, just my own experience in Michigan in politics and labor. It's there wasn't really engagement with the membership on the election process. It was okay, the local's endorsing this person, we're going to go knock some doors. But now the conversation is rightfully turning to, what are they going to do for us before we give them their endorsement? I heard that from Sean Fain. He, in a critical way, he's we have to stop putting resources, in so many words, to the consultant class. We need to give resources to our own people, whether that's on the shop floor or whether that's our own union member candidates running for office, whether they run as independents or a part of the main parties. It's supporting our own people with our own resources and charting in that way a objectively kind of independent path forward. And I think that is necessary, because it's not a surprise or a secret that both parties are losing favor with workers. I'm from the Rust Belt, swing state. I know very well the problems with the Democratic Party and their inability to garner trade. I don't want to say trade union votes, because trade unions do turn out for Democrats in larger numbers than Republicans. But the question is, what about the people that don't vote, that maybe are registered to vote, but they don't see themselves in the political process? Or even the millions and millions of people and working people that aren't even registered to vote? How do we reach them and create a political program that responds to the needs of working families? And I think that's another big question I had coming to this convention. And it's good that, at this convention they didn't invite any candidates. There are no politicians here. And, that sends a message in a way.
Do you have any other observations from either the convention center main stage or from your conversation with delegates and attendees?
I think something that needs to be said more that, it's from delegates, attendees, in and around the convention center, at the bars, is the question of the war. The war in Iran, what that's doing to working families, gas prices, but also, if there's something that most Americans agree on, it's an end to endless wars. Trump ran as a so-called peace candidate and got a lot of votes that way. Obviously, he's not. He's very belligerent, as we know. But there's some criticism from the establishment Democrats that's like, Trump's doing it wrong. We can do it better. We can I guess, do a regime change in Iran better. We can take over and help, in air quotes, Ukraine defeat Russia, and like all these things that, frankly, I don't think most workers give it two craps about. What we care about is feeding our families, paying for school, paying for housing. The rent's too damn high. Like, people our age, we can't even buy a house if we wanted to. So these kind of questions, bread and butter issues, are deeply intertwined with the question of the war economy. And another thing too, talking with some machinists, some auto workers, is the question of industrial policy at a national level. We don't really have that. If we had an industrial policy, it's the war economy. And I think that's a really big question that, as a country, as a labor movement, we have to face and answer to. The Pentagon gets so much more money than everything else. I mean, it's outrageous. They're trying to make it $1.5 trillion a year. What about labor law enforcement? What about OSHA? What about the NLRB? Like, what about all these questions that are important to our class, working people? And I just, on a moral end, it's like workers are the ones that go fight these wars, and typically it's workers killing other workers, and that's not okay.
Cameron Harrison, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that is it for today's program. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Don't forget Labor Notes, great resources. Make sure you go there if you are in need of union support. You can subscribe to Means TV with our discount code TVLR and receive 20% off either your first month or your entire year. Lots of great programs on the site, so make sure that you check it out. Subscribe to our newsletter at tvlr.fm. Donate to the program at tvlr.fm/donate and leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR or send us a message at tvlr.fm/contact. We'll see you next week. We're going to be live next week for the first time in a couple of weeks. Or no, we were live the week before last. So no, it's not. I'm sorry, I messed that up. But we will be live next week. We're going to have some great stuff for you. We're going to have more stuff from the AFL-CIO convention, some of our live reactions to the AFL-CIO convention and the Labor Notes convention, where we are at right now. That's why we're not doing the show live. So make sure you tune in next week. Lots of great stuff for you. We'll see you then.